Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Seconds to get everything sorted. Um, I hope I have everything correct. I'm going to try not to boomer it, but I'm making absolutely no promises. Um, Anonymous Rex, how dare you suggest that I subject you to slop? This is not going to be slop. It's going to be very, very good. Particularly good fun. See? Working as intended. Leave everything is working. I take it you can hear me. Way too quiet. See, I tell you what, if it's not, I'm going to be very angry with you. Leave everything is working. Doesn't seem that quiet. I take it you can hear me. You liars. Right. I'll turn my mic up a little bit quiet. Anyway, right. So, hey, right. How's it going, guys? Imperial Guard Lord Militant Carolus Benjaminus. Oh, yes. For the Emperor. Right. In fact, just if anyone's wondering about my credentials when it comes to talking about Warhammer 40,000 and Starship Troopers, I happen to be painting something all day, so I've got paint on my thumb because that's what I do. And I actually did get my... By the way, yeah, so I have my little gaming channel, which you can go and watch if you want. And one of the things you may see on there is me doing little painting videos where I'm painting stuff. This will become relevant as we... there's a link in the description, by the way. So go and subscribe to that. But this will be relevant as the video goes on. Because, of course, we have a leftist here suggesting that the only people who do not want leftism in Warhammer are those people who do not play Warhammer. Tell you is wrong. That's absolutely wrong. Who's the Chad in the video on the right? Well, from your perspective, me. But from my perspective, I think he's still on the left, actually. But this is Chad Lieutenant Titus from Captain Titus. I think it's Captain Titus. And he's sick of this leftist shit too. You know, I had to download Snapchat and install the bloody get the filter, and then I couldn't get it to flip the camera, so I had to like angle it at my screen of this picture of Titus to get this goddamn screenshot for the thumbnail. It was a lot of work, so I hope you appreciate it. Anyway, so YouTube actually made me aware of a particular video by someone called Adam something. Now, I'd never heard of this, but as you can see already, it's not as if this guy's being very subtle about what he's saying in this video called The Problem with Warhammer 40,000. I see. So the problem with Warhammer 40,000 is Hitler. Okay. Got it. Hey man, if there's buffering, what am I supposed to do? It's Lieutenant Titus. Actually, no, it's Lieutenant. You know, that's a great point. In Space Marine 2, I was actually pleasantly surprised it was Lieutenant rather than Lieutenant. Obviously, there's not a lot I can do about the buffering guy. So, but I shamefully I'd been Americanized, so it's Lieutenant Titus. That's true. But anyway, as you can see, Adam Something's video begins with a picture of Hitler, and YouTube put this in my feed. I was doing some painting actually. I was looking for something to watch, and YouTube was like, "Hey, would you want to watch this?" And I was like, "Yeah, go on then. I do want to watch this." And so I thought we'd watch it. Now, like I said, I don't know who Adam Something is. I don't have any personal issues with him whatsoever because I've never heard of him. But I did have a look at his channel. He does happen to have a video from 3 years ago called "How I Escaped the Alt-Right and Fascism and Right Libertarian." So he's that kind of person. I see. Well, that's fine. He's allowed to be that kind of person, of course. And God forbid goes down the pipeline to the alt-right, so which I don't think existed in 2021. But anyway, it doesn't matter. let's go and let's have a watch of his video, because this has just been a genuine beauty.
Warhammer is a universe where people fight wars using hammers. Okay, not really.
It kind of is.
Warhammer 40k is a massive, bombastic universe in the grimdark future of the 40th millennium, where humanity is fighting wars on an epic scale on multiple fronts against all sorts of horrors. Space orcs, space elves, literal demons from hell, humans corrupted by literal demons from hell, the Zerg, and also the Tau.
And you can see why the average leftist looks at that and goes, well, that's problematic. I don't want to have to side with the humans. And it's like, to be honest with you, you don't have to side with the humans. I've got lots of Xenos armies or Chaos armies. You do not have to side with the humans, but most people tend to at least morally side with the humans, because, of course, as he's framed it there, it's pretty obvious that mankind is in a precarious situation and has lots of enemies to fight on lots of fronts. So war seems like a pretty big theme in this tabletop war game, and maybe it's mostly because this is a tabletop war game that the universe reflects the theme that it does. But as I said, I think it's perfectly acceptable for the humans to fight in their own defense, as I've said previously in places. And I think it's completely legitimate to have that opinion of your own species against other hostile, aggressive species, or evil demons who are trying to destroy the human race and co-opt the human race for their own ends. Now, as a person who I would suggest is corrupted with one of these evil demons, I'm going to guess Zench is his demon, actually. Now think about it. I don't know anything about him personally. So until I get further proof, I'm just going to go Zench. I can see why he has a problem with it. The left is like, wait a minute. A faction fighting for the supremacy of mankind, of alien races? This is Nazism. It's like, no, this isn't Nazism, actually. Nazism is a lot more parochial than that, to be honest. It didn't have such grand ambitions. But Adam does live by the rule, and this is a very important rule that many, many leftists adhere to. And honestly, it's kind of their North Star of morality, kind of the guiding light of what they do. Their principle is, what would Hitler do? That's the foremost thing in their mind. So if Hitler is drinking a glass of water, they're suddenly conflicted when presented with their own glass of water. They're like, I do need to survive, but Hitler would drink a glass of water. And so, of course, they find something that's filled with weird additives and drink that instead, because Hitler wouldn't drink that. And when it comes to almost any subject, their first question is, what would Hitler do? And if Hitler wouldn't take a specific approach to that subject, then that's immediately on the table and preferable to anything that Hitler himself would have done. And you'll see this theme coming through this video perennially. Let's carry on.
Warhammer got it started a tabletop game, and at the core it still is. Imagine chess but more complex, where two players bring out their hand-painted armies of miniatures and battle it out on a large board. It's a cool experience at game stores or game bars, where you get to meet people, socialize, and show off your cool miniatures. Today, however, the Warhammer IP has already outgrown its tabletop niche and now includes ultra-popular AAA game titles such as the latest Space Marine 2, with more than 2 million copies sold worldwide. But
Space Marine 2, incidentally, is something I've played, well, the entire thing of, actually. People were basically bullying me into getting it, and I was like, fine, okay, it does look quite good. I did find myself quite enjoying it. I played it right till the end. As you can see, it's all just streamed there. So, again, another one of those things in which I know of what I speak.
the Warhammer IP has not been without its controversies. We now have gamer-gators accusing the parent company, Games Workshop, of turning the game woke by
Little old me. Hey, Mum, I'm famous. But yeah, no, I agree. Games Workshop did finally go woke. And this is entirely because Amazon is a woke company. And Games Workshop have been trying, as I understand it, to get a 40k series or movie or something like that done with Amazon. And it seems from the leaks that we've had that one of the prerequisites that Amazon had was to have a woman in power armor, as in a female space marine. And apparently Amazon, Games Workshop, bent on the, okay, fine, we'll make her a, why is this name suddenly off the top of my head? Custodes. Which they then had to come out and kind of retcon and say, well, look, this is fine. This has always been, we've never specified that the Custodes are just men. Unlike with the Space Marines, in which it is canonically that the Space Marines are just men. And then people are like, well, yeah, you have really, haven't you? Though? Pulled out a bunch of examples of that. And Games Workshop were like, yeah, okay, but we're still going to do it because Amazon bugs. And then you had a bunch of leftists on the other side. I saw it was a great post on their Facebook page being like, so great, female custodies. We're interested in buying those. When do we get the miniatures? And Amazon was basically like, never. Why would we make female custodies miniatures for like 5 people on the internet? We're not going to do that. What a tremendous waste of money that would be. And of course, our friend Adam here suggests that the only reason you might be concerned about the ideological subversion of Warhammer 40,000 is because you're an incel and a Nazi and you don't play Warhammer. So as someone who is not a Nazi, not an incel, and does play Warhammer, I feel quite well positioned to refute this allegation on the merits.
Introducing into it the most absurd creatures of all, women.
What a nice straw man. Nobody is complaining that there are women in Warhammer. Of course, there are Sisters of Battle and various other factions that, I mean, there are factions that are entirely female. And there are women, of course, well represented, like the Imperial Guard, the Eldar, blah, 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 blah. But he doesn't care about that. He doesn't care about that at all. Because it's not about the representation of women in the hobby that is the issue. What it is about taking away a male space. Something that is only for men is exclusionary by its nature. And therefore, to take that away, to introduce women into the space, deprives you of that thing. Because it's not about improving anything. No, so he's not even suggesting that this might improve the game or anything like that. What he's suggesting is, you're an incel, you hate women, and you're a Nazi, and so you should have things taken away from you. That's what this is about, and it's what it's always been about. It will never not be about that. And so, anyway, Adam has mischaracterized all of Warhammer. He has mischaracterized what people's objections to this is, and he has mischaracterized the kind of people who are objecting. Most of the time, it's not die-hard right-wingers who are objecting to this. It's people who simply don't want to see the property politicized in one direction or the other.
No, wait, it's actually even more ridiculous. Gamergaters are mad that Games Workshop changed the lore of one of the factions that no one plays or cares about.
But also, let's assume they don't. Let's assume that this is the least played faction of all time, and the player base is dwindling to such an alarmingly small number. The Games Workshop are like, are we just going to retire this or what, right? It's very similar to the Mafia coming up to your shop and saying, hey, nice day, and then going to the next shop and extorting him for money. You go, well, hang on a second. I don't want the Mafia extorting that person for money. And they say, what are you talking about? We're not extorting you. What's your problem with it? You don't even get we're not taking your money. We're just taking his money because of whatever reasons. It's like, okay, well, sure, maybe that's true. Maybe I'm not personally getting affected by this. I mean, I'm just playing regular Space Marines and Eldar and Thousand Suns. But the point is, I don't want to live in a mafia state. I don't want to live in a state that is governed by these kinds, or not even state, society. I don't want to live in a society that is governed by these kinds of moral standards. Even though it's not affecting me personally, nobody should be extorted. And that's what's happening with the leftist racketeering that they do on social media. They're coming around and say, look, not you personally, don't worry about it. We're just getting that guy. It's like, sure, it's that guy now. But I mean, income tax began on like the top like 1% of people. And now everyone's paying 30%. Like, this will salami slice its way down to you. It is not good to live in a state that is essentially going to be run by a bunch of leftist mafia thugs. So no, it's unacceptable, even if it doesn't affect me. Carry on.
By saying that some of its soldiers can be women. If you want to, I mean, it's you assembling the miniatures, you can decide what head you put on them. And this resulted in a global outrage among people who have never touched a Warhammer miniature, or a woman. That's it, Games Workshop. I could suspend...
There we go. The only people who complain about this are incels who don't play Warhammer. Well, that's not true.
My disbelief for space orcs, space elves, and hell in space run by space demons, but women? If women are real, how come I never touched one?
Well, it's not even funny. Like, if it was funny, then I wouldn't even mind. But it's not even funny. Right? Yes, it's really difficult to suspend your disbelief when the process is we take a person and use an unbelievably vanishingly rare resource to turn them into a roided up super soldier. It's like, right, okay. So we choose the best of the best. We choose the strongest people of mankind who, from, various warrior races or whatever. And it's like, okay, but why would you do that to someone who is 50% weaker than the alternative? Why would you spend any amount of time and effort on someone who is just physically going to be smaller at the start? If you want to maximize the return on your investment here, it just doesn't make sense that you would do the roided up super soldier serum that's incredibly rare on a woman. Like, what would be the point? Why wouldn't you just do it to a man to get that extra, even if it's only like a few fraction of a percentage difference at the end? Even then, why would you? And it's not like the Imperium of Man lacks men, so it's not like a shortage of men, a literal manpower shortage. So it could only be done for ideological reasons. And so it's not really about being a woman or being a man. What it's about is, why are there a bunch of communists who are trying to take away this thing that I happen to love and happen to really enjoy, and the aesthetic experience of it really matters to me? Why do I have to be subjected to that? And all they can say to this is, you hate women, you're an incel, as if it's 2014 all over again. If you think those kind of insults wash in this day and age, you are drastically mistaken, just like you are throughout the rest of this video.
On the other hand, opposite to the Gamergaters, we have an increasing number of voices saying that Warhammer 40k is starting to become problematic by turning from a...
Right. Say hi to everyone and look tomorrow. Well, quick interruption from my son there. Anyway, let's go back.
Become problematic by turning from a satire of fascism into a celebration of it, especially...
Right, so Leftists is like, wow, 40k is looking like a celebration of fascism, which then makes us arrive at the perennial point: is Warhammer a right-wing universe? As in, politically, if you inappropriately apply a modern political lens to the Warhammer 40,000 universe, which these people can't stop themselves from doing, is it left-wing or right-wing? Oh, well, I fucking wonder. How could it be left-wing? Like, it's a universe of perennial war in which mankind is constantly on the brink of being overrun by not unstoppable, but implacable alien forces that seek to destroy it completely. And weirdly, that makes it a little bit right-wing compared to modern liberal democracies that are currently in a time of peace. There's something a bit intrinsically right-wing about 40k, especially the Imperium of Man, which is an expressly hierarchical and theological organization. Yes, Warhammer, from the Imperial perspective, is very, very right-wing. Big deal.
Especially with the latest Space Marine 2 game. Gamergaters counter this by accusing such critics of overreaction. It's just a game, you're taking it way too seriously, nobody wants to be a literal space Nazi, you guys need to chill the fuck out.
I mean, if you think we're going to be overrun by literal space Nazis in the near future, I have some bad news for you. Your weird leftist fantasy is not going to come true. You are not part of the resistance. What you are is part of the person defending the order of the world, the current left-wing order. And you can say, well, it's rolling back on certain fronts. Maybe on certain fronts, but there's still a kind of perennial leftishness that pervades all of the major institutions, liberal democracies. And you're not the resistance, you're fighting for the status quo. And actually, people like Donald Trump are actually the resistance, which is why Johnny Rotten has successfully identified the conservatives as the rebels against the establishment.
Say. So what's going on here? Do Gamergaters have a point? Is Warhammer turning woke? Or are the critics correct here, and Warhammer is indeed turning into a celebration of fascism? To answer
the people who make Warhammer would desperately love Warhammer to be woke. It's not anything on their part that prevents it from being woke. It's the fact that it is, and has been from its inception, almost an entirely male-dominated space, with a very hyper-masculine frame, because of course this comes out of tabletop wargaming, which again is like 99% male, and was made by a bunch of men who weren't subjected to constant feminist hectoring. Me, 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 me. And so it turned into just a natural celebration of maleness, things that men like in general. And so, yes, it may well be that the people who make Warhammer want to be woke, but they just can't. They know that their sales are going to crater and they're going to encounter so many other problems, especially as in the beginning they did try and sell female Space Marines. It's just they didn't sell. And apparently shops were sending them back going, "What? Stop sending us the female ones. People don't buy them because why would you want to?" And conversely, on the other side, with the left going, "Oh, this is a celebration of fascism." Okay, but is there anything that the left doesn't claim as a celebration of fascism that isn't also avowedly communist? And the answer to that is, of course, no. They think everything is fascism. These people aren't worth listening to on the subject.
For this question, we need to talk about Starship Troopers, the subject of much online discussion as of late. Now,
yeah, and I'm pretty good at that too. Just for anyone who may remember, my Politics of Starship Troopers video is still up. It's one of the videos that survived the purge. And I still consider this, how many years ago was this? 6 years ago, my God. I still consider this to be, frankly, the canonical video on Starship Troopers. I've seen lots and lots and lots of videos about Starship Troopers by other people, and they've all been wrong. My one is still by far the best one, and Adam's going to show everyone why.
please hold that thought for a moment and let me pay some bills. You might have noticed that the world is kind of going insane at the moment, with Trump nominating a pro-Putin grifter as the director of US National Intelligence and a vaccine denier as Secretary of Health.
So the Tulsi Gabbard thing is particularly egregious, I think, because the allegation of her being pro-Russian comes from Hillary Clinton. She just said it in an interview one time, and it was just like, oh, well, we're just going to keep calling her pro-Russian then. There's no reason to think Tulsi Gabbard is in any way disloyal to the United States. And frankly, I really like Tulsi. I have done for many years, and I think this is just an egregious lie that they just say. They just say it, and they never back anything up. Like, there's no proof of it. He can't provide any proof, but he still smears her anyway, and there's just no need. And this is why, if you look at all the people he's smearing here,
And the vaccine.
every person here was a Democrat at one point. Trump was a Democrat, RFK was a Democrat, Tulsi was a Democrat. Like, I imagine Vance was probably a Democrat at one point. Like, they've all been essentially ejected from the Democrat Party as it became more and more left-wing. And now they're leading the Republican Party to destroy the Democrats. It's like, okay, great. Just brilliant. I just think that was wonderful.
Denier as Secretary of Health. The political.
Also, looking forward to what RFK is going to do, frankly. I personally quite like him, even though he does say some things that I'm like, okay, I don't know about that. But, you know, at the end of the day, if his entire mission is like, look at these weird chemicals in your food. Maybe we could be like the Europeans and not have the weird chemicals in our food, but still have the same food. And maybe that'll be good for us. That seems like a fairly normal thing to do, because I've been to America a bunch of times. I'm telling you guys, your food is poisoned. I don't know what's happened to it. I'm not an expert or anything, but look at the list of ingredients. This is weird and you don't need them.
Could not be more tense and uncertain, and this brings with it a steady growth of politically motivated online harassment, among others.
Oh yeah, as if one side is only responsible for the online harassment.
Keeping your personal data to yourself is more important than ever. And Delete Me, the sponsor of today's video.
Skip past that.
Starship Troopers is in many ways the predecessor of Warhammer, being one of the trailblazers of hard science fiction. Its setting is also similar to Warhammer's. We have a sort of central.
I'm not sure that I'd call Starship Troopers really science fiction. It's more kind of science fantasy. Like, Heinlein never spends any time explaining the mechanisms of the physics of the special, you know, the science fiction-y elements. He never spends any time on that, because it's not about that. Like, Heinlein's work is primarily moral, and he is exploring different moral themes from various perspectives. Heinlein, in his intellectual development, goes from someone who was a Democrat, again, like this is a very common refrain. He worked, I think it was in the 20s, on a California Democrats campaign staff, trying to become the governor. And then over the course of his life becomes a very hardline libertarian. And Starship Troopers reflects that. It reflects the moral exploration that he has done as to, okay, why am I the thing that I am? And what ought I be? And so, again, it's very interesting how the left keep creating these kinds of people, isn't it? They've all come back to them with a vengeance at this point.
The militaristic human empire called the Terran Federation.
Well, it's not an empire, is it? An empire rules over other nations, but the Terran Federation is literally the Federation of Earth. It's not an empire. It doesn't have an emperor. It is, in fact, a democracy, a representative constitutional democracy.
Battling it out with various alien species, including giant space bugs. Much like Warhammer, Starship Troopers grew out of an original niche IP. With Warhammer 40k, it was a tabletop game. With Starship Troopers, it was a book which later got adapted into series, movies, and games, making the IP transition from niche to the relative mainstream. Now, tabletop Warhammer is very different from video game Warhammer, Space Marine 2 in particular. And in the same way, there is a big difference between Starship Troopers, the book, and Starship Troopers, the movie. The 1997 movie, which was at the center of that god-awful discourse.
Okay, so there's something to note here. The interpretation of Starship Troopers by Verhoeven, a communist, was bad. He never read the book. He has absolutely no sympathies for Heinlein's libertarian perspective. And he is overtly concerned about Nazis. So there's a distinct authorial difference between the two. However, with Warhammer and Space Marine, the Games Workshop retain editorial control over what the thing looks like in the end product. So they want it to be canonical. They want these things to be consistent. Games Workshop is very good, actually, at maintaining a canonical consistency between the original lore, and my god is that voluminous, of Warhammer, and the products that they make. It's not perfect. Right? There are obviously, you can dive down rabbit holes on it if you want, but it's generally quite good. And to compare like Heinlein's to Verhoeven's Starship Troopers to various Warhammer properties that have been adapted from the lore, well, they're always way more consistent than this is. Just FYI.
The Starship Troopers book is rather jingoistic. Some people called it fascist literature, but I don't really agree with that label.
Now, I'd be interested to know why he doesn't agree with this label, because he'll explain, like, he doesn't. But he doesn't explain what the reason is. And it's hard to see why he wouldn't think it fascist, because, I mean, it's a militaristic novel. Why is that not fascism if it's also based on a space empire? So I think he's just saying that because, I mean, obviously you'd have to be a moron, but I think he thinks it's kind of like the cool thing to say or something.
The book is militaristic, obsessed with toughness and masculinity, heroism and honor, but it's otherwise not covert fascist propaganda or anything.
Why not? How is that not covert fascist propaganda by any other standard you use to define what fascism is?
It was written by a former soldier at the height of the Red Scare and McCarthyism in the 1950s, so as far as I can see, Starship Troopers is really a product of its time.
And Warhammer's not a product of its time? Warhammer is a product of the late 1980s, where we're winning the Cold War. We probably just won, or nearly won the Cold War, when Warhammer is first conceived. And it's made in England by a bunch of history nerds who just wanted to create a really epic setting for this tabletop game they've got. It wasn't about fascism. If anything, the Warhammer universe is the space Roman Empire, which is why everything is gothic, which is why they're all wearing like, they've got their little, the chaplain actually doesn't have one. The wing thing, Aquilia or something like that, which is why it looks like the Roman Empire in space. Anyway, let's carry on.
Still very right-wing, idolizes the military. In fact, in that world, the only way to gain full rights as a citizen is through military service and so on. But is it fascist? No, it's just 1950s right-wing and jingoistic.
How's that not fascist? How is that not fascist from your perspective?
Imagine a sci-fi universe created by an ex-military boomer who has a Clint Eastwood profile picture on Facebook and
I imagine that Heinlein was probably like Silent Generation or Greatest Generation. He's older than the boomers. People think the boomers are older than they really are.
who can't shut up about how back in his day everyone worked 26-hour workdays 10 days a week and no one complained, as opposed to the weak and entitled generation today. Military service should be compulsory to teach these soy latte drinking weaklings some discipline, but in person the guy is nice to you and always offers you beer when you come over.
Yeah, okay. Heinlein, what he's saying here is Heinlein has a good reputation. Heinlein is a star. Heinlein is a legend, and he doesn't want to alienate them. Okay? I appreciate that. You don't want to alienate the Heinlein fandom. You don't want to disavow all of his work because it has resonance. There's something good and timeless about it. I get you.
It's the authorial context of the Starship Troopers book, basically. Now, keep in mind, while the book itself isn't fascistic, the Terran Federation in it kind of is. And the
How could it be that the book that is lionizing the Terran Federation isn't a fascistic book, but the Terran Federation is fascistic? And just to be clear, right, there is nothing about the Terran Federation that's fascistic. Again, I went through this in autistic detail in my exploration of the Starship Troopers book and movie. The Terran Federation is a constitutional democracy, limited suffrage, that can be earned by anyone at any time by going through a 2-year course of either in the military or in some kind of other service, although mostly it is focused on the military. And then you get the ability to vote for the Star Commander or something. I can't remember the name of the person in charge. And in the film, we see an exchange, a peaceful transfer of power after the current commander screws up on Klendathu and he resigns, which is very honourable. And again, he shakes hands with the new woman and she takes over. So there's nothing fascistic about it. Fascism, for anyone who doesn't know, and I have lots of books of fascism, about fascism, and of fascism on my shelf there. Fascism, the core tenet of it is totalitarianism. As Mussolini put it, nothing against the state, nothing outside the state. What was his state outside the state? I can't remember exactly, but basically, the state is everything. State takes on the perspective of a god, fascism. The state precedes the people in it. It exists past and above the people in it. It exists after the people. And so everyone ought to be a ward of the state. It is literally the ideology that invented the term totalitarianism. Starship Troopers, Heinlein is being incredibly hard line on the fact that the state is incredibly restricted. There's a great part in the book where Johnny Rico has been, doing his training for like 2 years or whatever. And then he goes back to like a city in Canada, I think it is. And he just looks around at just how opulent and wealthy and capitalist it is. And how they've got all this, consumer goods in the shops. He's just like, oh my God, I can't remember any of this. Basically, these are all things I've left behind in my military training to become an elite soldier, a Starship Trooper. And Heinlein makes the point of specifying, look, this is through Dubois, which is Radchek in the movies. He has them give a spiel being like, look, this is the most free with the minimal taxes, smaller state that is the most effective that we could possibly get. And there is no better form of government, which is why we've never had a revolt against it. And sure, I mean, you can say, well, this is just Heinlein essentially projecting a fancy, a libertarian fancy. Sure, I agree it's him projecting a libertarian fancy, but at least we agree it's not fascism. Right? That's obviously not what fascism is.
Values of the 1997 Starship Troopers movie are, in many ways, the opposite of the books. The director, Paul Verhoeven, grew up during the Nazi occupation of the Netherlands and didn't really like fascist, hyper-militaristic ideologies for obvious reasons.
Sure, but he also conflates any kind of militarism with fascism, even if the militarism is done for a good reason, for a democratic cause. And Paul Verhoeven didn't read the book, and stupidly, in his movie, represents a constitutional democracy. And you keep saying the word fascism for some reason. Did Hitler resign after Stalingrad? Was there a peaceful transfer of power? Did people decide to vote? Or did Hitler ban elections? I'm sorry, it is preposterous that you keep saying this. Even the movie doesn't depict fascism. Let's carry on.
So he proceeded to subvert our expectations, not with medieval anti-air railguns firing tungsten rounds at Mach 5, but by turning the Terran Federation, the Starship Troopers, into a satire of jingoism and fascism. While the book depicts the Terran Federation's campaign against the bugs as a heroic struggle, the movie portrays it as a hopeless war, started on false pretenses, fought by a bunch of propaganda-addled macho idiots marching into certain death.
Now, just to be clear, it doesn't display that. But that is what Verhoeven wanted to display. He just didn't do it well.
Instead of heroic acts, glorious sacrifices, and cinematic last stands, you just get torn apart by giant bugs.
Sorry, what? There's no distinction there, right? Oh, look, this is heroic cinematic last stands getting torn apart by giant bugs. That's not a dichotomy. That's what happens in a cinematic last stand. And that's what a last stand is by definition. You end up dying horribly, but the nobility in it is in the moral courage that the people display when there is no hope, and yet they fight on. It's not that it's evil to die in a last stand. It's actually heroic and glorious. And yeah, if you can display that in all its gory detail, and people come away from that going, yeah, you know what? I would love it if I did the same thing in those circumstances. Were I on this planet, I don't want to be the guy who's hiding in the closet, in the locker, crying and wibbling on the floor. I'd like to be the guy who mans the walls and heroically defends my comrades until at least some of them can escape. That's, even if I die, even if I get torn apart, I'd rather be that guy than the guy who gets smushed by the bug when it gets shot down. Better to be those guys than that dude.
I mean, the whole reason for the war is that supposedly bugs pulled the Javier Milei and destroyed Buenos Aires by launching an asteroid from a different solar system towards Earth.
Oh yeah, Milei is destroying Argentina. I mean, I suppose he's destroying the leftist organization of Argentina, right? Like, they're like, well, it's no longer a country. Why? Because leftists don't control every aspect of people's lives using the state. Sounds weirdly like fascism. Milei's doing a great job in Argentina, as I understand it. But this is the most common, and the rest of this wiki actually tells us what happened. But the most common leftist misinterpretation of this is that the humans started the war. That's not true. There's just no evidence for that. In fact, the evidence would seem to point the other way. But carry on.
If anyone is getting Iraq War, Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction vibes, yeah, you should.
No, that doesn't make any sense. If Saddam Hussein had attacked us with any kind of weapon, then yeah, you could make some sort of parallel there. But Saddam didn't. And we'd been providing his weapons anyway. So why would there be a parallel to that? We're not invading them for no reason. We are literally under attack. And I say we, the human race, because as you guys in the chat have been pointing out, the leftists are identifying with the bugs again. Yeah. Their moral constituency might be the bugs. My moral constituency is the human race. I actually don't think that's fascism. I don't think it's fascism to side with other humans over an insatiable alien species. And I'm a leftist.
The bug's home system is tens of thousands of light years away. Even if they somehow managed to precisely hit Earth from such a distance, the asteroid would have taken millions of years to get there.
Right. So, first things first. Is it that science fiction has never been inaccurate with the physics involved? I mean, we can look at various wikis, again, like the Starship Troopers wiki that you cited a minute ago. It's just uncontestable that the bugs sent the meteors. We know that they did. And we know that they're launched. Again, it's just specified in the book that they use bug plasma. Now, whatever that means, however it's done, we don't know. It's never given to us. It's never filled in. But it's unquestionable that the bugs are launching missiles at the Earth. And one of these hits Buenos Aires and destroys it. And like 9 million people die. So what are we supposed to take from this? Oh, well, you know, it would have taken blah blah blah, blah. Yeah, okay. It's a story. Heinlein is representing the story. The bug, maybe the bugs have sort of wormhole technology. I mean, you saw the sort of graviton well or something like that in the movie. I don't think that was meant to represent like a wormhole or something, but whatever, right? The point being, we don't know how they're getting them across, but somehow they are. Like being pedantic with the physics of it doesn't change it. Right? This is just canonical that the bugs are launching the meteors. So deal with it. And in fact, it does actually say that they're coming from an astrobelt. I don't know. I suppose the astrobelt probably is in Clondathy. I don't know. I'm just sure that Heinlein just didn't know about astrophysics or something.
So no, the bugs could not have done it. The whole
Again, could not have done it. Okay, it's a fictional universe.
asteroid business also begs the question, if the bugs can pull that off, why don't they keep doing it once humans attack them?
Has this guy even watched the film? Like, I don't blame him for not reading the book, right? Even though the book's really thin, you could read it in an afternoon. But like, has he not watched the film? Because I mean, this is literally a still from the film in which it shows us more bug meteors being launched at Earth. But the humans have built space defenses against the meteors that shoot the meteors down before they hit the Earth. The bugs did keep repeatedly firing meteors at us to the point where we had to put up space defenses to blow the meteors up. Why would he say, why don't the bugs send more? No, they did. I mean, do you not remember Carmen getting her ship crashed and like losing the communications device? She had to do the duck under it and make sure that the rest of the ship survived. They were like, oh, brilliant job. Because that was the bugs firing another meteor at the Earth. Like, why would you say this? I thought you were the media literacy crowd. I thought you knew what you were talking about. You've again, it's like you didn't watch the film.
Because it's all bullshit. The asteroid was
No, it's not.
an accident at best and a false flag operation at worst.
There is no evidence, not even evidence. There is just nothing to suggest, right, that the meteor was an accident, and the fact that they repeatedly are being flung by the bugs, however the bugs do it, which again is not explained. However the bugs, we know that the bugs are doing it, and there's no reason to think that this is a false flag. And as I pointed out in this, I can't remember which section it was, quite late in it, but there is just absolutely nothing that we are shown that is dishonest from the Fed, the news reels and the information that we're given. Nothing in it is wrong, right? It's all factually true. In fact, this particular scene was great because, like, prior to this, you saw Rico on the phone to his mum and dad, and it starts getting dark, and then it's cut off. Well, we know that it happened, and we've got no reason to think it's not the bug. We've got no reason to think. I mean, okay, the bugs can't fire a meteor that far across the galaxy. Okay, how did the humans do it? How did the humans get the meteor there? Why is there no evidence? Like, the media transparency is unbelievable in Starship Troopers. We should wish for media transparency like it now. But notice he's made up a little theory that's not supported by it. The bugs didn't send the meteor. No reason to think that. Absolutely none. There's absolutely nothing to suggest that that's the case.
That got blamed on the bugs to keep the war machine and thus the military-industrial complex occupied. In the end, however, all humans accomplish is getting a bunch of soldiers murdered.
Again, this is just not true and not supported by the canonical texts. If we take both the book and the movie to be canonical. Movie, obviously, not so much, but there's just nothing to suggest that. And also, there's nothing to suggest, especially in the book, that the military-industrial complex is desperate for new wars. In fact, Terran Federation goes out of its way to try and stop further expansion into certain zones. I mean, in the movie in particular, you know, sorry, I've been ill all weekend, so I've got a rough throat. In the movie in particular, you'll remember that it's the Mormon colonists that were told not to go to a certain area and colonize a certain area because it was in the bug exclusion zone that provokes all of this. And so it isn't that the humans are just like, yeah, rah, 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 rah. And there's no reason to think this is a false flag. The guy is just making up a false narrative about a movie that I'm honestly suspicious that he hasn't even watched.
By the end of the movie, we see literal child soldiers deployed as the Terran Federation is running out of regular troops.
There is absolutely nothing to suggest the Terran Federation is running out of troops. First things first, there are billions of humans in Starship Troopers, obviously, and they've only lost a few 100,000. So, I mean, America wouldn't be troops with this sort of numbers. And all of the soldiers are volunteers. In World War I and World War II, there are thousands of examples of like 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds lying about their age to sign up voluntarily to go and fight for their country. I'm not saying it's a good thing. Obviously, they shouldn't. But this isn't them sending literal child soldiers. And, I mean, the rest of them don't look that young. But even if they are, okay, so what? They're 18. Okay, 18-year-olds can sign up and fight for their country. That's historically incredibly normal. This is none of these people are conscripts. And it doesn't suggest that mankind has drained the, like, I don't know, 500, how many, I don't even know how many people there are, but there are definitely billions of people They haven't lost billions of men in the wars to the point where they're like, okay, I know, you're going to have to conscript children now, because they're not conscripting anyone. And especially in the books, where essentially all of Earth's military forces are special forces units, right? Highly, highly well-trained, power armor wearing elite soldiers. I mean, Verhoeven doesn't represent the military of Starship Troopers properly at all, but whatever, it's not a big deal.
And it's not like the bugs are a threat to humanity. They aren't like the Tyranids, actively trying to eat humanity. The bugs are on the other side of the galaxy and generally don't bother you unless you bother them first.
Why would you say that? Why would you make up like such a demonstrable lie, right? First things first, they flung an asteroid that killed 9 million people in Buenos Aires. I'd consider that a threat. Secondly, the bugs are not just sat on Klendathu. The bugs are a militaristic and expansionist power of their own. They colonize other systems, which is why you had the Mormon exclusion zone, because it wasn't known what planets in this system, or this zone, the bugs had colonized. And it turns out that the one that Mormons went onto had been colonized. The bugs are not just sat there in their little nests on their little planet, minding their own business. They're actively expanding and appear to be the ones who start the war with the humans in the first place. So again, Adam here is just lying. He is lying about the nature of the text. He is lying about the story being told. And he's doing it to frame the humans as the bad guys in a story where the author and the text itself would indicate that the humans are in fact the good guys. Because the entire problem Adam has with this is the idea that there could be a just war. They're in his mind, there cannot be an unjust enemy that is justified for us to fight, and we are not justified in defending ourselves as humans against something that is non-human because of Adolf Hitler. That's his entire opinion, and you'll see as we carry on.
Which humans did by settling on the Bugs' home planet. During the closing scene of the story,
again, listen to this again.
The other side of the galaxy and generally don't bother you unless you bother them first, which humans did by settling on the Bugs' home planet.
Did you watch the film? We know that's not the bugs' home planet. That is a different planet that they have colonized. The bugs' home planet is a obviously much more difficult affair, and it's somewhere else. This is not the bugs' home planet. And part of the reason that they're doing this is because they
During the closing scene of the Starship Troopers movie, the soldiers capture a brain bug, the bug's equivalent of a command and control vehicle, basically. In this scene, Neil Patrick Harris reads the brain bug's emotions and loudly proclaims it's afraid to the soldiers around him, after which everyone erupts in cheers and the whole scene is played off seemingly as the glorious ending of a righteous military campaign. Except it's not, and the movie goes to great lengths showing you why in the 2 hours preceding this scene. First off, as I've said, it was the humans who attacked first.
False.
The bugs did not start this conflict.
False.
They were attacked based on false pretenses, and
false.
They decimated the humans for it.
Well, not really. The first attack on Klendathu was a failure, but then the other attacks, like where they captured, I think actually was an attack on Klendathu. You are right on that actually. But the other attack to get the brain bug was on a different planet, because like I said, the bugs have colonized various areas, and one of the important parts about getting the brain bug that Adam doesn't seem to understand is that the brain bug is not just it's not just a small thing, right? Because it's a hive mind species, if you can extract information from the brain bug, you can learn more about the bug's weaknesses, you can more about their strategies, tactics, and strengths. If you want to actually, because I mean, one of the things that in the movie that they make a big deal about, it's not really in the books, is about the arrogance of the humans. Well, they're just bugs. Why don't we just kill them? They're not going to be strategic. And it turns out that they are. You know, the 100,000 dead in an hour on Klendathu or whatever. Massive issue. So, okay, well, we need a more strategic plan to fight these bugs. So he gives us an example in a minute that is just preposterous.
I mean, if the literal child soldiers by the end aren't indication enough, I don't know what to tell you. Hundreds of thousands of human deaths for no reason. That end scene
for no reason. What do you mean for no reason? It's to win a war. Humanity is at war with this alien bug race. There is a reason for it.
with the brain bug is basically one massive cope by the Terran Federation. The director even added a nice little touch. When the bug starts jittering out of fear, the soldiers quickly back away from it. This is not a victory. You captured what is basically a single command and control vehicle at the end of your campaign that cost the lives of hundreds of thousands of soldiers.
Okay, so that's a kind of crazy perspective, right? Oh, they backed away, therefore this isn't a victory. You only captured a single command and control vehicle, as if whatever that means, right? But, sorry, my tab just cracked. So this is correct, right? It's a bug from an alien species that humanity has very little information about. It moves, it does something, and everyone backs away. What? Why wouldn't you? You don't know that it's not about to explode in a massive poison gas cloud or something. Right? You don't know anything about the biology of this alien. It might do something to you that you weren't expecting. Yeah, it makes sense to back off. Right? But secondly, capturing like this bug is, again, a very strategically important thing to do. And so this was obviously worth the lives cost that it took to capture it. Right? It obviously changes the way that the war is fought.
It's like when the other Federation, the Russian one, exhibits a captured Abrams on Red Square. Yeah, you got that one, congrats, but you also lost more than 18,000 pieces of heavy equipment in Ukraine. And it's...
Okay, if this tank, I don't know anything about tanks, by the way, but if this tank had data in it that told you about the disposition of Russian forces, how Russian forces coordinated, allowed you to understand the mindset of the enemy, and gave you access to allowed you to see through what was otherwise an opaque fog of war, that'd be worth it. Right? That would literally be the difference between victory and defeat. That would save millions more lives in the course of the war. Of course, this, just like his other examples, they're not comparable things. Like, just like in Iraq, it's just, it's weapons of mass destruction narrative. That's not true. This is not comparable to capturing one of the enemy commanders. Like, if they were parading a Russian general down there, you'd be like, okay, that was probably worth it, right? We'll get whatever information we can out of him, especially if we can literally extract it without any concerns for human rights or whatever. We would be able to know their disposition if we could like mind read him or something like that, put him in some sort of brain scanner. And so we literally just take all the Russian plans out of his head, which is literally what they're doing in the film, then it'd be totally worth it. Like, there'd be a completely acceptable sacrifice, which is what they did with the brain bug. And they did that because of the defeat in Clonathu. That, it's not just mindless bugs we're fighting, it's an organized military we're fighting, and therefore we can't just go straight for the capital, we have to start taking planets and weakening their position.
Just the visually confirmed losses, not to mention your casualties. Anyway, the Starship Troopers movie is very clear about it being a satire. The discourse that erupted around it, however, was truly mind-boggling.
So yes, Starship Troopers is an attempt at satire, but it's not a very good attempt. And he keeps using this picture of them dressed like Nazi officers, because that's as far as it goes. The satire in Starship Troopers is purely aesthetic. On a functional level, in the movie and in the way that the Terran Federation are represented, there's nothing fascist about it. And everything is really open, actually, about the genuine costs and difficulties of war. They don't make it look easy, and it still comes out as heroic, and people still go, yeah, fuck yeah, I'm totally with the Terran Federation.
Troopers movie is very clear about it being a satire. The discourse that erupted around it, however, was truly mind-boggling. On one side, you had people with the reasonable take. Everything that happened to humans is basically their fault, the war with the bugs was completely unnecessary, and the Terran Federation is a crazy, jingoistic fascist empire.
That is what he thinks the reasonable take is. That's mad. I mean, literally, millions of people watched that film, and they didn't come away with that take. So I guess millions of people are just unreasonable fascists, and only a doctrinaire leftard is the reasonable person. Mental. Absolutely mental.
I mean, the director put Neil Patrick Harris in a literal SS uniform. The message is very clear. Also, the brain bug scene is followed up by a propaganda video in which people gleefully tortured the brain bug, so there's that too.
Sorry, I was reading the chat there. I missed whatever he was saying there. Because, yeah, like, Paris, you're right. Fascism is when someone is reasonably right-wing and looks cool. Yeah, that's literally what he's come to. That's literally what he's arrived at. That's precisely his point. Fascism is when you have drip. Yep, that's exactly what it is. Not forgetting the Nazi uniforms were designed by Hugo Boss, right? So, yeah, okay, they ended up looking good. Well, what a fucking surprise. You know, one of the most famous fashion designers in history made their uniforms. Yeah, no kidding.
Also, the brain bug scene is followed up by a propaganda video in which people gleefully torture the brain bug, so there's that too.
Well, are they torturing it? Because it looks like they're getting information out of it. That seemed to be the point of that propaganda reel, quote unquote. Again, he says propaganda reels, but nothing we see in them is fake. So is propaganda just telling people the truth? Is propaganda filming from the front lines? Is propaganda giving us unfiltered access to all of the information we're looking for? I suppose in a leftist world, yes, that is what propaganda is. Because it means that people don't end up more leftist. In fact, they might end up not leftist. So that's definitely propaganda.
But some disagreed with this assessment. A lot of people legitimately did not understand how anyone could take the side of the bugs, empathize with the bugs even, when all the Terran Federation characters are attractive and the bugs are disgusting.
That's right. You only support the Terran Federation because their actors are attractive. Bugs are gross. That's why. I mean, just look at this. Okay, yeah, so in this, which one do I relate to? Well, it's got to be about looks. It's got to be about look. It's got to be how handsome. How much do I want to have sex with those characters, says the leftist. Or it could be that one of them is human. I have empathy for other humans. And one of them is literally a mindless drone that's going to tear me limb from limb under all circumstances. Any and all circumstances. And so, yeah, I mean, I think I will side with the humans. Especially as we have not in any way got any canonical evidence that the bugs can be reasoned with. And one of the things I talked about in the Starship Troopers video is because, the bugs view the universe totally differently to human beings. They do not have individualism. An individual bug is no different to the rest of the class of bugs to which it belongs. I mean, maybe the brain bugs actually individuate in some way, but we don't know. But the majority of the bugs that we see, again, we don't know, but maybe it's a fair assumption it's a brain bug. But even then, why would it necessarily see itself as being individually different to other brain bugs? Anyway, different conversation. The point being, all of the bugs that we see are just disposable. They willingly dispose of themselves. They're essentially living weapons that are here, like or living servants, just a slave caste to carry the brain bug around, or the living weapons to kill anything that the brain bugs and the hive mind sends them at. They do not have individual thoughts. They do not have a worldview that we can really comprehend, and they cannot empathize with us, nor can we empathize with them. And so, why would I not empathize with the humans? I mean, aside from the fact that if a story is a representation of reality and a suggestion of here's how things would play out if the premises of the story were true, as Aristotle. Well, if I'm going to insert myself into that, am I with the humans who are struggling to survive, or am I with the bugs who are struggling to kill the humans? Well, I mean, I can't really help but view myself as being within the collective that is humanity. So naturally, I would have to be with the humans. I don't think I'd have a choice. And I don't think the bugs would accept me, even if I wanted to join their collective group. I don't think they're going to have me. I mean, maybe they'll they'll probably just suck out my brain and take whatever information about humanity that they've learned from that. And then that's it. Right. So again, for them, like blowing up Buenos Aires is like us blowing up a munitions dump in like Syria or Iraq or whatever, right? Or in Russia, right? It's not killing people doesn't mean to them what it means to us. And losing bugs doesn't mean to them what losing people means to us. Like this, they lose bugs like we lose ammunition. That's how they view it. And so why would I empathize with the bugs? Why, as a leftist, would you empathize with the bugs? Unless really all of leftism was just predicated on self-hatred.
And I mean, that's the whole point. The way you instinctively feel about the bugs is how a white supremacist feels about blacks, or how a Nazi feels about Jews. Revolting freaks to be crushed under their boots.
Brilliant. So we've arrived at the what would Hitler do? Hitler would fight the bugs. Well, then we can't fight the bugs because Hitler would fight the bugs. Believe it or not, right? I actually go weeks at a time without thinking of Adolf Hitler. Like, it's really only when a leftist brings up Adolf Hitler that I end up thinking about Adolf Hitler. This is going to sound weird. I actually don't think Adolf Hitler is the most relevant thing about modern politics. I don't think he should be the totem, the North Star of our political concerns. I actually don't care what Hitler would do in the context of Starship Troopers. And I don't really care what he'd do in the context of modern politics either, because he's been dead for 80 years. And I'm British. So why would I care about that? But this guy, obviously, Hitler. Oh my God. Hitler would fight the bugs. Right. I'm pro-bug. It's like, okay, moron. They're going to suck out your brain. But whatever. Hitler was a racist. It literally boils down to that. Hitler was a racist. Okay. All right. I mean, I'm not for Hitler. But I am for being a part of humanity and humanity continuing into the future. I don't think that's a sufficient condition to also make someone Hitler. I know I'm really pushing the boat out with my extreme interpretations. You know, the media literacy crowd were like, well, he's wrong about that. Just, I mean, they're so preposterously black and white. If you aren't a communist, you're Hitler, even if it's literally in the face of space bugs who are trying to devour the human race.
Not coincidentally, this is often how Jews were depicted by Nazi propaganda, disgusting insects to be purged from the face of Earth.
Okay, but why are you bringing it up? I don't really think that's that relevant to the space bug war movie, actually. Like, it's just weird how you're, like, really obsessed with this.
From the face of Earth. The movie essentially challenges you to take the side of the group you were conditioned to hate. And
the movie might do that, actually. The movie might do that. That's not wrong. The book doesn't do that. Verhoeven is not challenging you to take the side of the bugs, right? Verhoeven is challenging you to have levels of personal discipline that you previously thought unattainable, and to suggest that only the people who with proven self-discipline ought to be directly involved in the political process. That's really what Starship Troopers, the book, is about. Moral choice, and moral fortitude, and moral uprightness, as Verhoeven saw. And Verhoeven had quite a hard-line view on this. Like, I'm not as hard-line on this as Verhoeven is, by far. But I do think there's something quite appealing about it. And I do think it would be a good aspirational goal to attain. And Verhoeven, Heinlein was saying that. Verhoeven obviously is like, yeah, but they're Nazis. It's like, I don't know if essentially a modern interpretation of Stoicism is Nazism, actually. I don't think we should let the Nazis have Stoicism. I think that normal people can have Stoicism too, actually. I think it might be a good thing for it. And also, because of our what would Hitler do mentality, I don't think we should also join the communist bugs. I actually think they might be bad too. But of course, a communist person would disagree.
Oh boy, did many people fail this test. The discourse essentially became
Many people did indeed fail. They didn't join the communist bugmen.
An indicator of who would fall for Nazi propaganda, where all the Aryan Germans are depicted as tall, strong and beautiful, and all the supposed subhumans as revolting freaks.
My God, I can't believe that they depicted themselves as the Chad and their enemies as the Soy Jack. Just again, why would you bring this up?
With that, Starship Troopers gave us a very important revelation about the importance of aesthetics. If an otherwise horrible faction is depicted as badass and handsome in an IP, some people will start idolizing them and co-opt their visuals.
But they're not horrible. Like, even if the Terran Federation wearing like fluorescent pink uniforms and were fat Reddit soy boys, they would still have the right attitude. They would still be a constitutional democracy. And if this was the best humanity could muster up to go and fight the aliens, I'd be like, okay, well, fine. They're still the good guys because they're still defending humanity. Even if a bunch of, fluorescent pink soy boy fucking fat Redditors were running around on the front lines dying in their droves, I'd be like, well, that is heroic from the fat soy boy Redditors. Who would have imagined that they'd be the people on the front lines? I can't believe this is the best mankind's got. Even if they had the worst possible aesthetics, they would still be doing the right thing. And the bugs attacking us, killing a bunch of people and trying to wipe us out would be doing the wrong thing. It's actually not that difficult. But you are right. Aesthetics are important. They really are important. And we should think about them more.
No matter how monstrous the faction is or how much satire you heap on. And
they're just not monstrous. And again, the Imperium of Man is just not, well, it's pretty monstrous. It's a lot more monstrous than Starship Troopers, I'll tell you that.
This brings us to Warhammer 40k. Let's consider its opening paragraphs. It is the 41st millennium. For more than 100 centuries, the Emperor has sat immobile on the golden throne of Earth. He is the master of mankind by the will of the gods, and the master of a million worlds by the might of his inexhaustible armies. He is a rotting carcass, writhing invisibly with power from the dark age of technology. He is the carrion lord of the Imperium, for whom 1,000 souls are sacrificed every day so that he may never truly die. Vast armies give battle in his name on uncounted worlds. But for all their multitudes, they are barely enough to hold off the ever-present threat from aliens, heretics, mutants, and worse. To be a man in such times is to be one amongst untold billions. It is to live in the cruelest and most bloody regime imaginable. These are the tales of those times. Forget the power of technology and science, for so much has been forgotten, never to be relearned. Forget the promise of progress and understanding, for in the grim dark future there is only war. There is no peace among the stars, only an eternity of carnage and slaughter, and the laughter of thirsting gods. The 40k universe is a rough place. It
is a rough place. But let's go back to this. So, would anyone from the Imperium ever describe the Emperor of Mankind as the Carrion Lord? The answer is, of course, no. Would they say that the Master of Mankind operates from his golden throne through the will of the gods? The answer is obviously no. Games Workshop have done this many times when talking about the Imperium, as we'll get to in a minute. This is a perspective that is oppositional to the Imperium. They would never say that the gods put the Carrion Lord on his throne so that we can just be evil forever. That's not how they would describe themselves. So this is not an internal perspective of the Imperium. This is, in fact, the sort of perspective you get from Chaos. This is the sort of perspective you get from Zench, the Changer of Ways, or perhaps even Slanesh or Nurgle. This is a position that wants you to think badly of the Imperium. It's not the story that they tell themselves. And it's just very interesting how Games Workshop keep doing this. They keep describing the Imperium as an evil place from what is essentially the Chaos narrative on the Imperium, rather than the Imperial narrative on the Imperium, because the Imperial narrative on the Imperium makes it sound badass and something you'd want to be a part of, even if it sucks balls, even if it is the most grim, dark, gruesome, grueling thing you've ever had to go through. It still makes being a Space Marine sound cool, which is why they're the poster boys of Warhammer, why they're the most popular faction by far, right? Because, okay, yeah, stuff sucks. But stuff sucks because we're constantly being bombarded by alien species trying to wipe us out. And we have to survive this, either sign up and die in our billions with the Imperial Guard, or become unbelievable, roided up freak soldiers in the Space Marines. Dedicate our lives to being just honorable warriors until we die. That's it. That's the entire future you have. And that's what keeps humanity alive in this setting. Now, this is just the nature of fantasy. This is the nature of a story. You set the premises. In Warhammer's case, the premises have been set at a very, I guess you'd say, high bar for grim dark. This is where the term grim dark comes from. It's in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only one. Now, remember, this was made for a tabletop game. So, of course, you want to have constant justification for fighting. Doesn't really matter. But this means that from the premises, you extract conclusions. And the conclusions is, yeah, okay, stuff sucks, but this is all we've got, and we're just constantly fighting. And if we let up on the way that things are done, then the aliens will come and destroy us. Okay, fair enough. Then the Imperium are, therefore, de facto, the good guys of Warhammer. Because the option is, live under this suffering regime that sucks, but is necessary, die horribly, tortured or screaming or absorbed as biomass, whatever it is. You've got to choose that one, because that one means you're dead. So, well done for making the good guys in Warhammer the Imperium. It's as far as it goes. I'm sorry if you're a leftist. It's a really tough pill to swallow, but that's how everyone who's not a leftist perceives it, which is why constantly the Space Marines are represented as the good guys, because they are.
universe is a rough place. It's basically war and suffering turned up to a ridiculous level, and it kinda works. Warhammer 40k manages to straddle the line between epic and silly, nailing the perfect ratio of the two. And this works really well for the board game. You both bring out your armies you spent 200 plus hours painting, one of you fields Chaos Marines, the other Astra Militarum, and you duke it out in this silly but epic setting, having lots of fun in the process. This over-the-top horrifying universe is a great niche for tabletop games played by nerds, including yours truly. But
Yes, so it's a fun game, and really that's where it should have ended. Like, to a normal person, and again, it's not like Warhammer's become political these days after the leftists tried to infect it with their politics. Beforehand, I never saw right wingers like talking about how we could make Warhammer more right wing, if such a thing is even possible, right? It's always been since left wingers have been like, right, we need to make Warhammer communist. Right wingers have been like, right, okay, well, we need to really understand why Warhammer is not communist. And actually, that turns out to be a really easy thing to do because it's so intransigibly right wing in its DNA. So it's just very interesting how like the right wingers weren't constantly like badgering Games Workshop to emphasize the right wingness of Warhammer. It's the opposite.
what if you want to make a universally appealing AAA video game? How do you implement this idea that everything in the grimdark future is horrible, the soldiers are brainwashed drones dying for nothing, and that the wars you fight are completely hopeless?
But they're not brainwashed drones fighting for nothing, and the wars aren't hopeless. We win some of the wars.
And all of you are essentially doomed. How do you make an enjoyable AAA game around these ideas? Games Workshop thought long and hard and decided that they'll just kind of forget about most of the grimdark stuff.
Okay, quick thing. One of the problems with his "you're fighting and dying for nothing" narratives is because the leftists cannot imagine something greater than themselves. They are, in effect, their own personal god because they don't believe in anything transcendent. Now, that doesn't just mean religion. That also means a continuum of, say, culture and space and time and destiny. They don't believe that the thing that is humanity or a nation state should exist going into the future if in some way that infringes on them themselves as their own personal god. So they can't imagine wanting to die heroically for someone else. They can't imagine. Why would you do that? The only good thing in life is me. I'm the most important thing in my world. And therefore, why would I die for something else? Now, all I'm saying is, everyone who has children, suddenly, as soon as you have children, like, oh no, I get it. I instantly get it. No, there are things more important than me that will persist after I'm gone. And if it requires me to die for them, that is a sacrifice I'm willing to make. Every single parent understands that. But of course, I'm going to guess Adam's child. Your average leftist doesn't understand that. And you'll notice that their entire critique is predicated on that. Well, war's just pointless. It's for no reason. No, there were lots of reasons. And sometimes they're worth it.
The Space Marine games, while containing hints of the absurdity of the Imperium, are for the most part made to make the player feel like a cool, epic, badass war hero soldier mowing down thousands of enemies without breaking a sweat. And with that, Games Workshop has made the biggest mistake possible when it comes to depicting fascists.
Maybe, just maybe, they weren't thinking about depicting fascists. As I said, it's the Roman Empire in space. It's not Nazi Germany in space. Maybe they were thinking, how can we make a fun game? Why does it need to be morally complex? You have the evil gods of chaos, and you have the Tyranids in Space Marine 2. Is that not enough? Again, this is not morally complex. A bunch of traitors or a bunch of aliens that want to eat your face. It's like, there's no moral complexity there. You don't have to worry about killing Zench civilians, like Thousand Sun civilians. And all of the aliens are definitionally evil because they're all attacking you and trying to eat your body. So there's no moral complexity in Space Marine 2 because you're fighting in a battlefield. You're not like wondering, oh, do I need to destroy an entire planet of innocent people to prevent a chaos infestation? That just doesn't come up. That's not what's happening here. And so the problem in depicting fascism is they didn't depict fascism, and they made it look like fighting for the Imperium was a good thing and fun. And like I said, I've played all through Space Marine 2. Yeah, it was fun. It's a lot more fun than I was expecting, frankly. I'm not normally a big fan of the style of game that Space Marine 2 is, just the hack and slash. But they did it really, really well, and it was
They made them appear cool and badass. And yes, Space Marines are fascists. They're turbo space Nazis who will turn you into minced meat if you say something they deem heretical.
They're not fascists, right? Fascists didn't just turn people into turbo mincemeat for saying things that are heretical. Now, I'm not saying they didn't persecute people. Obviously, they did. And I'm not saying they don't embark on wars of expansion. They obviously do. But Space Marines have a theological goal that fascism generally lacked. Fascism was a lot more secular because it was a product of the Enlightenment, a product of reason, rather than a product of theology. And so the Space Marines, again, the fascists didn't use the term heretic, right? They didn't use that term. They didn't identify people as heretics. But the Space Marines, of course, do identify people as heretics. And so you can say, well, there's a lot of overlap there with the Venn diagrams. Sure, there is definitely overlap there. There's also a lot of convergence there, divergence there. And it is just wrong to call them fascist. What they are is devoted servants of the divine emperor of mankind who is protecting mankind in the warp from the various alien gods, which we have proof of in Warhammer that are all real and the threat is real. So it's not that this is some bizarro conspiracy that they're engaging in. This is a genuine fight between the forces of good and the forces of evil, and this is what the soldiers of the forces of good look like. They are not fascists. And again, the Imperium itself is not a fascist organization. It is a space theocracy, a feudal space theocracy, in which, because of the size of the universe, it's just, you couldn't have a totalitarian universe, a totalitarian state in a universe that big. Like, there are millions of different worlds. It just wouldn't be possible. I'm not saying they wouldn't even want it to be the case, but it just couldn't be. And none of the writers thought of it being fascist either. They thought of it as kind of like a space Holy Roman Empire. Again, look at all the Gothic cathedrals.
Atrocities, purges, and genocides are just par for the course for them. If your service to the Imperium means mowing down 10,000 civilians because there might be heretics among them, so be it.
Wow, sounds a lot like the Soviet Union, doesn't it? What was the massacre with all the Polish officers? I can never remember the name of the word. It's weird for but as if the Soviets didn't do exactly the same thing. So at worst, you've got, oh, well, they're very ideological. Sure, they're ideological. Why wouldn't they be? Look at them. But it's not like mowing down thousands and millions of civilians for ideological differences is somehow uniquely fascist. The communists did that plenty. The liberals did that in the French Revolution, right? That's what the War of the Vendée was. And they killed hundreds of thousands of French peasants in that. And this is sort of the bourgeois liberal forces, just literally stamping out, ethnically cleansing areas of France that were deeply royalist. Right? The idea that this can be ascribed, oh, this is fascism. No, this is just something that very ideological regimes do. And, well, you're a communist. So, this applies to you too.
You're murdering women and children without any second thought or remorse because you are a mindless drone bred for combat, and that's just what it's like to live under the cruelest and most bloody regime imaginable. If you doubt me, I invite you to check out the episode in the Garden of Ghosts from the Hammer and Bolter series, where
I'm not signing up to.
We are treated to a scene of a purged Forge world. No, wait, that's the Adeptus Mechanicus thing, alright. Craft world. That's a giant space habitat, basically, where the Eldari, the space elves, live. Home to millions at minimum. Well, the noble Ultramarines massacred the entire Forge world, murdering untold thousands of men, women, and children. Because they were Xenos, therefore degenerate, therefore worthy of death. Shout out to Purity Seal for this lore tip, by the way.
Yeah, that's what they do. Because the Eldar would kill the people too. The Eldar would wipe out the Imperium of Mankind if they had the opportunity, and they don't.
You can find his channel under @ThePuritySeal. In popular first-person shooters, however, such things cannot be depicted because your game would be banned worldwide. A Warhammer 40k shooter game true to the lore would be a war crime simulator.
Remember, no Russian.
And it would just be weird playing as a psychotic, murderous maniac committing crimes against humanity for 8 hours without any self-awareness or remorse.
Space Marines killed a bunch of Eldar. And it would be weird playing as someone committing crimes against humanity. Oh, you've yet to describe any crimes against humanity there. And don't get me wrong, the Space Marines do commit lots of crimes against humanity. But your example just wasn't one of them. Unless you view literally any sentient being as fundamentally being human. And suddenly we see why they side with the bugs. They see the bugs being rational beings as being human, and therefore they must be persuaded to adopt a morality, must be capable of being moral because they're rational. This is the left's entire perspective, concept of morality, which means if you can speak to it, if it can have a thought, even if it's evil and wants to destroy you, then it must be mistaken and you should try and reason them out of it. And this is why they struggle so much with the brain bugs and the Starship Troopers bugs. Because it seems like they are capable of using reason, but are not capable of human reason. They're not capable of understanding a human's perspective and rationalizing it. And so, and like I said, they treat human beings like they treat ammunition. And so they're completely out of the loop. But anyway, carry on. We were committing crimes against humanity against aliens.
Course. Actually, that sounds like super fun and wait, I'm sorry, this video is for people 13 and above. Who let these children in here? But I love playing as an unrepentant murderer psycho. Yeah, try playing Mass Effect as a renegade. Don't believe me? Apparently, according to Mass Effect player stats, 92% of players played as Paragon and only 8% as renegade. Most people just don't want to be an asshole, not even in video games. But even if a Warhammer shooter was true to form and the player was made to feel like a disposable cog in a purposeless murder machine tasked with the occasional genocide, there are people who would love that and would absolutely play that game.
Okay, it's a video game. I play video games to experience things I would never do in real life. I don't play video games to be a goody two-shoes. Like why would... Oh, well, you know, I play a video game to practice being moral. Like, don't you get enough practice of being moral in your day-to-day life? Like, aren't you a good person normally? It's okay to cut loose and be a maniac in a video game. It doesn't matter. It's just a game. It's not actually a true reflection of yourself. It's just a game. Like, I appreciate stories are important and what they represent are important, but it's okay to play a game. Like, I play Bannerlord and I kill villagers sometimes because I need the XP. Like, I don't then go to sleep and think, oh God, I killed those villagers because I need the XP. I didn't even think about their lives. No, I didn't. Because ultimately, they're just digital. Calm the hell down, man. Not a representation of your actual moral praxis. Like, go and live your morals, and you won't be worried about these things. I always imagine that people who think like this themselves are not sure in their daily lives if they're actually good or bad people, and therefore they must have like people around them who are constantly saying to them, "Oh, you've done me wrong," and therefore, right? So they can never gain any moral authority of their own. They can never gain like a strong moral perspective. But I don't go around doing things wrong. Like, no, I don't think any of the people I know would say that I've done them wrong. And I think a lot of them could say I've done a lot of things right for them as well. So I don't worry about this at all. I'm confident that I'm a good person because my life seems to reflect that. And if your life doesn't reflect that and give you that security and confidence so that you could play a game as the villain, again, it could be fun, right? Why doesn't your life reflect that? Why don't you change your ways to be the good person that you are pretending to be in a video game? Just out of interest.
I get that. But if you're making a game, you want to appeal to the widest audience possible, not just to...
Generico says, them being moral in video games is absolutely an escapist fantasy for leftists because they can't live it. I mean, that's really how it sounds, isn't it, right? For me, the escapist fantasy is being the villain. For them, it's being the hero.
People on terror watch lists. In Space Marine 2, the latest Warhammer 40k game ended up doing the former, choosing appeal over what I would call honesty about its universe. You're not a mindless, psychotic drone killing in the name of a doomed fascist empire, but a noble, heroic warrior protecting your home from freaks and degenerates.
Now, let's again speak to the internal narrative and the external narrative. Whose internal narrative did he start with? You're a noble warrior defending your home from alien invasion or whatever. Yes, that would be the Imperium's narrative. But he's committed to the, oh, you're fighting for no reason and you're just an evil genocidal maniac, which is, of course, the loser's narrative, the external narrative, the people who are getting the wrong end of it. Well, okay, yeah, sure. In every conflict, there are two sides, and you choose a side. It's just weird that you always side with the people who are trying to kill the humans rather than siding with the people who are saving the human. Again, I'm not saying, the thing is, I'm not even saying you have to, right? In a video game, whenever I play Warhammer, I like playing the Xenos armies. I'm going to be honest. I find the Xenos armies very interesting and very fun. But again, that for me is escapism, because if aliens invaded, I wouldn't be like, right, I guess I'm signing up with the aliens, boys, because I fucking hate humanity. Unlike Adam.
The overt satire is basically gone because it had to be. There are allusions to the Imperium being bad, but not nearly overt enough. A Warhammer 40k true to form would be like a version of Modern Warfare where every second mission is no Russian, only even more bloody and deranged. But
that's not true. Like, you'd be fighting a campaign on an alien world. Like, not every Space Marine goes around murdering civilians for the fun of it.
If anyone...
And even then, right? And even then, it's not because they want to murder civilians. It's because there is some greater overarching reason. As in, there's a gene stealer infestation and like 40% of the population is infected with gene stealers. And that's going to bring the Tyranid Hive fleet down and kill everyone in the system. It's like, okay, well, that sucks. But that means we have to kind of make sure that there aren't any gene stealers on that planet so they don't call down the Tyranid Hive fleet. So that means we've got to scour the planet. It's not for the fun of it. It's not because they're like, yeah, it's morally good for us to murder all the people on this planet. It's because it has to be done because the universe is, as you keep saying, grim dark. It has to be done, and we're creating the worst possible universe. Yeah, we agree. It's the worst universe that has to be done in. It's not being done for the pleasure of murdering civilians, you fucking lunatic.
Released a game like
Honestly.
that, most countries wouldn't even let them publish it. Keep in mind, by the way, that I do like Space Marine 2, and I do think it's a good game.
To be honest with you, I would have appreciated some moral complexity in Space Marine. It would have been fun. Right? Have the story bifurcate. Right. You can either do this thing and you get a slightly easier ending, but morally questionable, or don't do it, and maybe you get like the bad ending where the entire solar system is consumed by a chaos god or something. I don't know. You know, like, that would be interesting. I understand what Games Workshop did this. I understand, yes, look, we're doing a hack and slash game. Now is not the time. But that would have been entertaining. That would have been perfectly good, actually.
Just before anyone would start yelling at me how the game isn't bad, actually. I agree, it's a good game, it's cool and epic, and I like it. But there are overarching issues with it, which we're currently discussing. Now, the reason why the Warhammer 40k books and tabletop games are allowed to get away with containing atrocities while video games aren't, is because in the game you would get to act out said atrocities. At the very least, we would get vivid depictions of them. You don't just read about, say, Space Marines murdering 10,000 women and children, or you don't just play with miniatures of a Space Marine faction, which according to the lore once murdered 10,000 women and children. Nope, this is an interactive video game where you are a Space Marine, and congratulations,
that is terrible AI rendering of the Space Marine. Why is the Aquila on his back? That's terrible.
Your next mission is to purge a civilian slum of 10,000 where the presence of heretics is suspected. Here's your chainsword and plasma incinerator, good luck. And then you get dropped onto the map with a counter appearing on your screen standing at 0 out of 10,000. Nobody would want to play that game, and those who even bother to try wouldn't have fun playing it if the game was even legal to distribute.
And the thing is, the reason that would be bad is not because of the moral question. It's because it would be easy. The reason that wouldn't be fun, say, obviously it'd be murdering civilians is morally bad. Yes, I agree. Even if games allow you to do it, yes, it's not fun. It's not morally good. But it wouldn't be fun anyway. So why would you make that the video game? Any video game has to have challenge in it.
Even though such a game would fit perfectly into the Warhammer 40k universe.
Yeah, Space Marine Postal. I mean, like I said, I don't care if it exists. You know, like there are like games like Hatred and Postal. You do things like that. They're not the games I want to play, but like, you know, it's a video game. Calm down, Jack Thompson.
Such is life under the cruelest and most bloody regime imaginable in the grimdark future. And that's just what they often do to fellow humans. Sentient, non-human civilians, even if not hostile, usually just get instantly murdered or worked to death as slaves.
Yeah. Sentient non-humans. Right. They get human rights too. As far as he's concerned, if it's sentient, it can be moral, and therefore it can be moral, therefore it's a human. That's their constituency. All sentient life So it doesn't matter how awful it is. It doesn't matter if it's an evil wave of bugs who are trying to destroy humanity and have killed millions of us already, like in Starship Troopers. It doesn't matter. They are technically sentient and therefore worthy of his consideration. And if you are being particular based on non-rational grounds, as in, I feel like a human and I have a sentimental and emotional connection to humanity and not the bugs, the problem was your bigotry against the ugly, hideous-looking bugs who are just as morally valid as you. That's what it all comes down to.
So Games Workshop had to take a different approach with their AAA game. For the sake of broad appeal, they had to gracefully sideline the unspeakable evil and cruelty of the Imperium. You're
Yeah, that's fair, and I don't blame them for doing that.
not committing atrocities, genocides, and other war crimes. Instead,
Wise.
you're fighting an endless horde of Tyranids, insectoid space alien predators, which threaten to overwhelm everything. In contrast to the bugs in the Starship Troopers movie, Tyranids are not the victims of aggression. Their singular goal is to devour absolutely everything. They are a
I've said it, but the Starship Troopers bugs are not victims either.
force of nature, basically, and there is nothing morally wrong with killing them. The other
Oh, that's good. I'm glad we've got to that part, right? There's nothing morally wrong with killing the Tyranids. Well, that's superb. Like, and again, notice how he frames it. The Tyranids are not intelligent, and therefore there's nothing wrong with killing them. Well, that's not true. That's not true. There's actually very little difference, in fairness, between the bugs of Starship Troopers and the Tyranids. Tyranids are capable of calculation. They're capable of strategy and tactics. They are not just bugs. They're not just a horde of bugs. But they do use their warriors in the same way. They're just ammunition. The termagants are just ammunition. But they do have their big brain bugs that do the tactics. So, interesting how he's got that wrong.
enemy faction appearing in Space Marine 2 are the Forces of Chaos, who are just evil. Once again, nothing wrong with killing them.
So Chaos get to be just evil, do they? Like, there's no moral argument being made by the Chaos Warriors, Chaos Cultists, and Chaos Fanatics. Like, they don't make any arguments against the Imperium. I mean, we do hear them say, well, death of the Corpse Emperor. So we do agree with the framing that you used at the beginning to describe the Imperium. That's the same framing that the Chaos use, but he doesn't need to think about it. No, we're not going to look into it, because that would undermine his entire argument.
Killing them. So your character, Titus of the Ultramarines, is doing the good thing, really. He's a protagonist. He's
Agreed.
also a brainwashed space Nazi psychopath, prepared to commit even the most heinous atrocities without a hint of doubt, should his masters command him. But let's not portray that, because
it wouldn't be relevant?
that would be a downer for the average player. Therefore,
It'd just be weird. You'd be like, okay, but why are you bringing this up? I mean, the fact that he's a kind of, I don't like the term brainwashed, but the fact that he's indoctrinated into like the Imperial cult and calls his fellow Space Marines brother and things like this, and the fact they're all like in that kind of groupish mindset, kind of reveals that they have a kind of groupthink that they adhere to. And the way they respond to chaos, calling them traitors, and implying they're sort of doctrinaire splitters, heretics. Again, there's something to be discussed there, but don't worry about it.
in Space Marine 2, Titus is mostly portrayed as a selfless war hero instead. And I know that there is a bit more nuance to the story and the character, especially in light of the previous game, but that unfortunately doesn't matter. That's stuff for lore wonks, not your average player who might not even have played the previous game. The nuance is lost on them. And because of this, due to the satire taking a backseat, we have lunatic space Nazis made to look like heroes, tirelessly fighting against a tidal wave of freaks that threaten to destroy their glorious civilization, which is
I knew I enjoyed it for a reason. Oh, come on, man. Come on. I think you might be overthinking this a little bit. They're not space Nazis. It's fair to fight off the aliens. And, like, it's not like there is a single civilization that has existed or probably could even exist that hasn't done something wrong, right? So all you're doing is saying, look, I have a category in my head called Nazi. And if I can successfully make up a story as to why someone gets put into that category, whether it's a true representation of them or not, then I've declared they are just bad. And that means essentially being sufficiently right-wing. Heinlein, Starship Troopers, Nazi, even though you say the book isn't, but whatever. From your standard. Space Marines, again, feudal theocratic super soldiers, not Nazis, but Nazi. Anything else Nazi, okay, great, I'll put it in the Nazi category, therefore bad. And what that really is you saying, look, I'm opposed to expressions of parochial strength, right? Or parochial expressions of strength. Strength for our own sake in the face of another group of sentient beings whom we're not prepared to compromise with. We're not gonna have the Star Trek future with these people. We're not gonna get around and have a Federation of Planets and have a sit down, have a diplomatic meeting with them. No, we're just gonna fucking blow them up. Why? Because they're bad guys. That's why. You're against this. And the thing is, that's fine. You can be against that, but it doesn't mean it's wrong, especially if they start the war, which in Starship Troopers and in Warhammer, they do. It's fine for us to be like, yeah, okay, we're not even going to debate with them then. We're going to win this war, and then we'll get on with it. That's okay. That's not like morally wrong. No, it's not off the table, and it doesn't make you a Nazi.
Is exactly how, say, white nationalists think of themselves, isn't it?
Oh, brilliant. We've got to the what would Hitler do again.
The brave champions protecting white civilization from an onslaught of swarthy subhumans who would destroy all they've built. And
just, okay, why do you keep bringing them up, though? Like, why are they on your mind constantly? That's the question. Like, what would Hitler do? What would Hitler do? What would Hitler do? Well, Hitler would fight the bugs. Okay.
since the video games have an overwhelming cultural influence compared to the books or the tabletop, the game's portrayal of Warhammer 40k becomes dominant in popular culture. Sort of like how the average person thinks of Superman as an unfeeling alien god. That's because those god-awful Snyder movies depicted him as such. Meanwhile, in the comics, he's...
Just want to be clear, I never watched any of the Zack Snyder Superman films. That's not my impression of Superman at all. Mine is the films from like the 70s, whatever it was, with guy got crippled after fell off a horse. Name. Chat, save me. What was the guy's name? The old Superman. You know the guy, the classic Superman. I can't remember his name. Christopher Reeve. Thank you. Yes, that's the Superman I remember when I was a kid. So that's how I perceive Superman, which is evidently a lot more like the comic books. Like I said, I never watched the Zack Snyder ones, so I'm sure Henry Cavill did a perfectly good job. I'm just not really a DC comics or comic fan, really. So I don't get this
cool and friendly guy. I believe Cosmonaut Variety Hour put it best, and I'm paraphrasing, in the movies Clark Kent is the mask worn by Superman, but in reality, Superman is the mask worn by Clark Kent. But due to the movie's overwhelming cultural influence over the comics, movie Superman becomes the cultural standard. Same with Warhammer 40k. The ultra-popular games will be the ones dictating the IP's public perception, not the niche books or the tabletop game.
Okay, that's true, but the Space Marines aren't really depicted as anything that they're not depicted as in the Warhammer lore in Space Marine 2. They're still zealot super soldiers who are killing all the enemies because they have been declared the enemies. They're not doing anything different there. It's just the game, understandably, doesn't focus on the more grim, dark aspects, which you've already complained about, which I think is a totally reasonable thing to do. But you're like, yeah, but Nazis. But we've got back to Hitler again.
Surprisingly, the far-right began co-opting Warhammer 40k already a few years ago, God Emperor Trump being the most obvious example. Also God Emperor Putin, go figure. Now,
I haven't even seen that before.
Far-right fans of Warhammer don't actually play the tabletop game, so you won't be meeting them in real life.
You know what, that's true. I mean, maybe they do, I don't know, but like, I think that just, like, I don't think, I started playing Warhammer when I was about 13 years old. First army was all. And then it was chaos. And I don't ever remember meeting anyone who I thought was, a Nazi in a Games Workshop store. Now, I think that's probably due to the fact there are so few people who are neo-Nazis. I mean, and the one example they bring up is a Spanish guy, again, you have to go to Spain for this, who called themselves, quote, the Austrian painter, when they were in this tournament, which, yeah, okay, he's probably joking, but let's assume that this guy is an actual Nazi, right? A neo-Nazi. We've found the one neo-Nazi who plays Warhammer. Okay, millions of people play Warhammer. Are we really that worried? I mean, there are going to be probably, 10 times as many communists, so 10 communists playing Warhammer. I'm just as worried as them. And openly wearing Nazi iconography. Okay, well, great. I don't want I don't want anything modern of any modern political signifier in Warhammer. Like, I don't want trans flags. I don't want pride flags. I don't want communist hammers and sickles. I want imperial eagles and whatever other iconography is actually appropriate to the factions and the law. Like, and if you walk into a Games Workshop store and you're wearing like some very political gear of any sort, I can totally understand when they're like, hey, we're not a political thing. Please don't be political here. That's totally fine. That's preferable. But like I said, I've only been going into the Games Workshop stores for decades now, and I've never met someone who seems to be an open neo-Nazi or an open communist, frankly, because I think just most people aren't. So I feel that you might be taking this a bit more seriously than it needs to be.
Online though, Warhammer 40k communities are often literal cancer, with people unironically parroting the fascist propaganda of the Imperium. Burn the heretics, kill the mutants, purge the unclean.
374 likes, 369 followers. Just saying, I'm not sure this is the biggest community in the world, and not sure that this is. I mean, I feel like you're taking this more and more seriously than it's taking itself. You don't show us any of the posts from it, so I can't tell. But this looks like a meme page to me. Maybe I'll go follow it, actually.
It is better to die for the Emperor rather than to live for yourself. And
yeah, that's good thought.
an open mind is like a fortress with its gates unbarred and unguarded.
Okay.
Killed lots of Xenos and got coin for the Emperor. Here's
What? Like, okay, I mean, these are just quotes from the Imperium.
rather than to live for yourself.
Obviously
An
hardline
open mind is
right
like a
wing.
fortress with its gates unbarred and unguarded. Killed lots of
So someone's posted in a Warhammer 40,000 group, but he's cleared out their name from Facebook. Killed lots of Xenos and got a coin for the Emperor. But is this Space Marines VR Defenders of Avarak? So it's someone who played, what, a VR game and was given a coin for winning in the game? Like, is this a modern political statement? Or are they talking from the in-world perspective that they played a game, killed lots of Xenos, and, won for the Emperor? Does that make them politically a Nazi? Come on, man. Like, you are scraping the bottom of the barrel with this. It's just laughable.
Xenos and got coin for the Emperor. Here's this image depicting an Imperium guardsman blowing himself up with an Eldari, basically a space elf, titled The Emperor Protects.
Yes. This is just in-world what the Space Marines are like, and nobly sacrificing yourself against the foe. I mean, look, give up. Give up, Monkey. You've lost. There's no Emperor to save you. Why do you persist on smiling? Because the Emperor saved me. Who will save you? And he kills himself to defeat the person that he thought he'd already defeated him. Like, again, this isn't a political statement. This is about recognizing the moral nobility in not giving up.
With 1.9 thousand likes, the soldier is glad to die for the Emperor and believes that he saved him by letting him die in war.
I mean, say die for the Emperor means to save mankind, right, in the context. Just FYI.
He's been brainwashed that hard, and the comments next to the image are of a similar vein.
Is it really brainwashing when you're missing 2 of your limbs? You're facing the alien that's going to kill you, and you're like, no, fuck you, I'm going to die for the Emperor instead. Is that really brainwashing? Like, I feel that brainwashing doesn't require such immediate reality to validate the scheme of the way that you believe the world to be. I feel brainwashing has to essentially represent an illusion, a falsehood. And it feels like that, given the context of the story, in the story, that's a real event that's happening, really. So it seems to be validated that he believes the way he believes.
Approved. When I'm gone, I'll meet the God Emperor, but you, Xeno scum, the only God you'll meet is the Dark God, or whatever.
Okay, but this is just people messing around on Facebook. There are entire Facebook groups called things like We Pretend It's Bronze Age Internet, and they post in character for people who are in that setting. It's like basically a LARP, or not even a LARP, but it's like a role-playing group. So if you've gone into a role-playing group on Facebook for Warhammer and be like, oh my God, look at all these people role-playing as if they're in Warhammer. This is terrible. Because this is just some fun. Like fun? Do we remember fun? What are we talking about? Oh yeah, that was meant to be fun, wasn't it? We're complaining about fun. This whole video is a complaint about fun. And you found more people having fun and being like, I don't agree with that.
That is, Cadia stands for Cadia. Cadia is a fortress world most famous for doing the opposite of standing, by the way.
Oh, good. It's great. We're going to shit on the Cadians now. What they got invaded. For anyone who doesn't know, they got invaded by Chaos, like one of Abaddon's great crusades that always fail. But the planet was destroyed before the Guard broke. So the Guard didn't run away as the planet was being destroyed. They stood there and fought until their entire planet was fucking wrecked. And that's a moral victory. That's literally the Warhammer version of the Battle of Thermopylae. And, now we're taking a shit on that as well. Oh, brilliant. Okay. I guess you're pro-Persia, I suppose, in the Greco-Persian Wars.
There are also common image replies, most of which call for murdering someone, usually the post-author, or non-humans in general, called Xenos.
Ah, yes, we're complaining about memes now. Okay. These are usually posted when someone's like, maybe we should change the law to include things that aren't part of the law.
Not just the evil, aggressive ones. No, literally everyone, including sentient Xenos and their civilians who...
Again, sentient Xenos and civilians. Okay, it's an evil alien race. It's trying to wipe out humanity. And they've got their reasons, but because they're sentient, I'm not allowed to kill them back. Because my moral constituency is every sentient being, and what we need to do is get the Federation of Planets around, sit down and have a meeting with the Klingons and reason with them as to why they shouldn't wipe us out. That's what we need to do. This is entirely what they're arguing for. It's the Star Trek world universe in Warhammer. That's what they want. That's what would make them happy. Just go and watch Star Trek, man. You don't like Warhammer. You don't want to play Warhammer. You want to play Star Trek. Yeah, it's fine. There are loads of Star Trek games. Go play those. It's okay for you to play those. We want heroic space crusaders. That's why we're the Space Marines. Unironically, why we're the fucking Space Marines. Just, religious space crusaders. That's what we're after. And if you want something different, go and enjoy something different. There's a big world out there. There's all sorts of things.
Would be otherwise neutral or even friendly. Just kill them all. I've also seen plenty of Warhammer memes about interracial cuckoldry, which is something far-right people online are absolutely obsessed with.
I just want to be clear. He's not wrong on this, right? There are loads of people on right-wing groups who are obsessed with this. It is weird. And honestly, you should just stop obsessing, man. Because again, the more you do something, the more people think this is on your mind. I mean, this guy's terribly worried about Hitler, so it makes me wonder about him. If you're terribly worried about this, then it makes me worried about you.
Don't look it up, trust me. Now, let's stop here for a moment. Am I not taking this a bit too seriously, pointing at obvious memes and jokes below posts and pretending they're serious? I do realize these memes and replies are jokes, but often they also aren't. Now,
I realize these jokes, but... Okay. Okay, carry on. So you've identified Nazis, which are people who play Warhammer, share Warhammer memes.
hold on, what the hell do I mean by that? How can one thing be two opposite things at the same time? I personally call such memes and jokes Schrödinger's shitpost. They are both a joke and not a joke at the same time. The meme exists in an ideological superposition until someone engages with it. So suppose someone posts a far-right adjacent meme like this, the Kekistani flag, which is a recolored Nazi Wehrmacht flag, also commonly wielded by neo-Nazi protesters. But here, it's just an edgy joke, you see. Or is it? If the response is negative, say if someone replies with, "Dude, what the fuck is this?" then oh, it's just a joke, it's just a meme, lamau, don't take it seriously. But if the response is positive, like, "Heh, my fellow red-pilled Kekistani brother whom the echo signs elites couldn't brainwash," then often the meme is suddenly not a joke. Ha, I know, right? Oy vey. And it's not like the person who posted the Kekistani flag is pretending either way. This is the funny part. Such people legitimately don't know what their intent is with the meme they post.
Right. So, if you don't know what the intent is with the meme you post, it can't actually be a dog whistle to evil Nazis who you didn't know you were signaling to, right? Like, if it's a joke and you're posting it innocently, you can't be dog whistling. And so only when it's posted with the intent to dog whistle can it be a dog whistle. So, okay, but okay, fine. Again, we're at what would Hitler do? And Hitler would post memes, apparently. I don't think Hitler would post memes, actually. Hitler seems to have no sense of humor whatsoever. He didn't seem like he was a funny guy and enjoys levity and banter. So I'm actually not too worried about that. When it comes to what would Hitler do, I'm on the pro meme section.
Is it just an edgy joke or is it serious? It depends on the meme's public reception. Of course, not all Warhammer memes are like that, but quite a few of them are. I can tell you a percentage here. So
I mean, I just think I think you're really overthinking this, bro.
far I could only determine that a non-trivial number of them exist and that such Schrodinger's shitposts are part of the far-right infiltration and co-opting of Warhammer 40k.
Anyone who wants to shitpost about 40k from within the perspective of 40k essentially has to post something like this, right? And even if you're doing it from the Xenos point of view, you've got just as awful things. I mean, all of these could be Khorne, right? Like, you would have vile degeneracy of the worst kind with Slaanesh. You would have vile degeneracy of a different kind with Zench and Nurgle. Like, you would have various other reasons for killing people with the other alien factions. If it was Tyranids, it'd be just about consuming you as biomass. Like, none of them would be good. So any amount of shitposting from within the 40k framework would end up being Schrodinger's shitpost, where it's like, oh, it could be Nazi. I say, so we just can't. Even if the people you're talking to, I mean, are literal, teenagers who don't know anything about Nazis or political ideology. I think you've just been cooking online for far too much in political spaces. Because, most people are just playing a game, as far as they're concerned. Most of the things they post are not politically charged. And those people who are such an unbelievably tiny fringe minority that I don't think we need to spend that much time worrying about them. And Games Workshop has disavowed them. That one Spanish guy's not allowed to play GW tournaments. Okay, there we go. Problem solved. The Nazi takeover of the world appears to have been thwarted by GW banning him from the tournaments. I think there are more real things to worry about.
It provides a nice little grey zone where you can keep dog whistling or posting what are essentially Nazi memes, only it's Warhammer 40k, so normies will think nothing of it. Far-right infiltration of 40k is such a recurring problem that Games Workshop had to issue multiple statements already stating that Warhammer is for everyone, it is not based on hate, it is satire, and that far-right people should fuck off from the hobby.
Okay, so Warhammer posted this because far leftists kept going on about me, and this video is an example of that. And so Games Workshop were like, and you can see here, the numberless legions of soldiers and zealots bludgeon their way across the galaxy. Almost every man toils in misery either on the battlefield or the countless manufactorums. All of this is slavish servitude to the living corpse of a god emperor, whose commandments are at best only half remembered, twisted by times and the fallibility of humanity. I mean, that's literally the Chaos narrative. Again, this is the enemy narrative to the Imperium, right? So Games Workshop have adopted the enemy narrative to the Imperium in order to make sure that people don't enjoy the Imperium of man and actually side with the aliens, right? Which it didn't work, obviously. But why would they do this? Why would they need to disavow one of their own factions? Every single faction in 40k is evil. The orcs literally just love violence. They just enjoy violence. They enjoy killing everything for the fun of it. Khorne, gets some sort of spiritual pleasure out of killing for the fun of it. The Drukhari torture for sexual pleasure. Slaanesh tortures for sexual pleasure. They murder for sexual pleasure. Every single faction in Warhammer is evil by some standard, right? Because it's a tabletop war game, and they need just a black and white reason for them to constantly be fighting, right? Oh, you need a reason that these people are fighting. Well, that's pretty easy, right? But for some reason, Games Workshop faced constant barrage of the Imperium's Nazi, the Imperium's Nazi, the Imperium's Nazi, not the alien ones. No one ever criticizes the alien ones. No one ever points out the alien ones are just as Nazi in every other way. It's only the human ones, the normal human ones, that are trying to uphold what they consider to be a standard of righteousness. Right? And again, you see how the political attack will target naturally on the Imperium, right? And so to the point where Games Workshop were like, oh god, there aren't millions of Nazis out there. They don't all love our product. And we're not going to cause the next Nazi uprising and takeover of the world, are we? No, guys, look, we don't like the Imperium. Actually, the Imperium's bad. We don't want to live in Nazi Germany, and therefore we disavow the Imperium. We don't disavow any of the other ones because a lot of them represent communists. We don't, or worse. We don't disavow any of the other ones. We just disavow the Imperium man because a bunch of online leftists have persuaded us there's about to be a fascist takeover, and we're going to be responsible for it because of the Imperium man. So yeah, we totally disavow. But that's what this is. It's not because it's not because Warhammer is making millions of Nazis, right? It's not happening, and no one thinks that's happening apart from this guy and the leftists who have persuaded Games Workshop that maybe that is happening.
Basically. So that's nice. But at the same time, Games Workshop is commissioning video games that neglect the satire in favor of a broader appeal, where the hero, who belongs to a literal superior race, selflessly protects his civilization from the marauding hordes of freaks and degenerates.
Right, so it's the Space Marine 2 to fascist pipeline. That's what he's saying. He's saying, look, you might well disavow your own product that literally pays your bills and keeps you in business, but there's still Nazis and you're still part of the Nazi pipeline. Gotcha, Games Workshop. What are you going to do now? He has some suggestions, actually. We're almost at the end.
And this is seen by far-right people who, in their own imaginations, are heroes who belong to a superior race, selflessly protecting their civilization from the marauding hordes of freaks and degenerates. And
who cares what they think? If you're like, oh, well, what would Hitler do again? I'm sick of analysing what Hitler would do. I'm more concerned about what I would do, given where I am and the reasonable circumstances, the circumstances I find myself in, and my reasonable response and expectations based on what my interests are, what other people's interests are, and what's morally appropriate. Like, why do I have to use Hitler as my bellwether of morality to do the opposite of what he does? Why do you have to do that? Like, we're not actually, this is going to come as a complete shock to you, but I actually don't think we're in danger of Hitler taking over. I'm not worried about it. I just don't see a new Hitler on the horizon. The worst I could imagine is something Heinleinian, like you expressed earlier. Like he says in Starship Troopers, where we're like, no, we're just going to have like a hardcore libertarian order that's kind of Darwinian, I guess, that, you know, where you've just got to get a job. The government isn't going to pay you benefits. You're going to have to do a bit of work in order to achieve the privileges of being in charge. Like, you know, just small things that are just insane to a communist. That would be the most likely right-wing backlash, I think. Weirdly, I just don't think Nazism is going to be it. You know, sorry, bro.
And so they identify with Warhammer 40k. They are drawn to Warhammer 40k content. They co-opt the aesthetics of Warhammer 40k. No matter how many statements Games Workshop makes, no matter how much they insist on 40k being satire, as long as the ultra-popular games make the Imperium look cool and badass, righteous even, the far-right will inevitably stay in its orbit and try to co-opt it.
But if you consider that the Imperium is cool and badass and is righteous, just the question. By its own terms, I think that's a fair analysis. Oh, look, there's a guy with a Warhammer. That's a fair analysis, I think. But yeah, so what's the argument being made here? The Imperium looks cool. It can justify itself. And that makes people I don't like, who are Hitler, think it's good. Well, I can't have this vanishingly small minority of Hitlers liking Warhammer, and therefore this needs to be taken away from the minority of Hitlers. And so to do that, you're essentially just going to have to get rid of the Space Marines. That's the argument. Get rid of the Space Marines. Where else are we going to go with this? Like, there's just nowhere else he can go. He's painted himself into a corner. The Space Marines are fascists. Fascists love the Space Marines because they're fascists, and they love them because they do fascist things, and so they're just going to have to stop being fascist, bro. Have you considered making the Space Marines communists? And I'm not over-egging this, that's literally what he argues.
This is why Warhammer 40k, in my opinion, is doomed to always have far-right hanger-ons, unless they take the lore into a different direction. And I'm not quite sure how to do that while also preserving the grimdark setting, which is one of the main appeals of the IP.
I kind of want you to make them communists. I realise that wouldn't make any fucking sense. And I realise that probably would ruin everything about Warhammer. But I really can't stop thinking about Hitler. And so you need to do something about it. Or otherwise, I, as a leftist, never feel safe. That's what he's saying. It's all about his safety. There's no practical, reasonable argument to suggest that Nazis are literally about to take over Western democracies and I don't know, kill millions of people. No one thinks that. No one really thinks that. No one's looking at anything. No matter what, like they've been saying Donald Trump's a fascist, and then Justin Trudeau sits there and goes, "Oh, I just had a wonderful meeting with Hitler." It's like, no, you didn't think he was a fucking Nazi, right? And I know you didn't. I know you're just liars. Everyone knows you're just liars. Everyone knows. And this is why when you were like, right, okay, it's like 2 days before the election, right, guys, we're all going to come out and call him Hitler. Oh, God, are you sure? I mean, we have done that many times. It didn't work. But, I mean, we're really going to call him Hitler this time. And they were like, yeah, okay, we've got nothing else. Just crank up the Hitler loudspeaker. Donald Trump is Hitler. And landslide victory for Trump. I'm thinking that actually it wasn't persuasive. I don't think it's that actually millions of people are pro-Hitler. I think that actually millions of people didn't believe you, that there was an imminent Nazi takeover if Donald Trump won again, and that's why he won. And that's because it's just not likely that there's an imminent Nazi takeover. It's not happening. You're living in the fucking past, right? This is not a worry. You don't need to worry about like the dozen people, or no, sorry, the 350 odd people in the Facebook group who, again, I don't think they're Nazis, but like, let's assume they're all Nazis. Like, there's just not that big. You know, you are hysterical. That's what this is.
We have some ideas here, though. I think what would help is getting more left-leaning people into the hobby.
Oh, good. So we'll go for the Sig Marxism subreddit, which is literally, I mean, it's just, again, notice how he is like, look at this right-wing Warhammer group. And it's, you know, just a quote from Warhammer. It's not, you know, Hitler's own Warhammer group. It's just a quote from Warhammer. And I'm assuming they're all Nazis, right? But no, Sig Marxism. Oh, this is definitely Marx's own Warhammer group. Okay, well, I mean, that's much more obviously ideologically aligned with an insane murderous creed, right? Again, when you were describing what fascists did, you were also describing what the Soviets did, Cambodians did, Mao did, Chinese. Like, so you're describing what communists do as well as what fascists do. And yet you're like, yeah, so I don't like those guys. But these guys, they're great. So, are they though? Are they?
Also, Games Workshop could add more diversity to the Imperium just to make the Chuds angry. Female
Well, I guess it would make the Chuds angry.
Space Marines? Hell yeah. Female Adeptus Custodes? Naturally. Adopt us Custodes. Also, add more skin colors. The ensuing outrage will basically be free advertising, and those who are put off by that, you don't want them in the hobby anyway.
Oh my god. Right, okay. Where to begin? Like, obviously, you will own the Chuds by adding female space marines. Yes, you will. But Games Workshop are well aware that Chuds are like 90% of their fucking audience, and that they'll never hear the end of it, and they'll probably end up collapsing. It would probably genuinely be the end of their fucking business model. Well, anyway, they'll have a severe loss if they do that. It's not worth the hassle to take away yet another male space. It's just not worth the hassle, right? The female Adeptus Custodes, they did because they thought they'd be able to get away with it. Then adding skin colors, it's the Imperium of Man. Man to mean the human race. Every kind of human is fed into the meat grinder. Like, why do you think that there aren't non-white Space Marines and people of non-Caucasian extraction in Warhammer? The Emperor himself comes from Cappadocia, which is in Turkey. People who are not white. So, again, just whatever. I don't know why I'm asking. It's just, I don't think that's going to own the Chuds, actually.
Do you have some more ideas? Feel free to share them in the comments. Normally I don't read them, but this time I'm genuinely interested and will go over them at least once.
I can't understand this left-wing fear of their own comment sections. I read my comment sections all the time. Like, most of the time, like 99.9% of the comments are just normal. Just, here's another point about the video that I want to add that you didn't include in your video. Oh, great. Thank you very much for the input. I appreciate that. Again, leave me some interesting comments, guys, you know.
In the meantime, thank you for watching. If you'd like to support my work,
I don't particularly want to support your work. So you mentioned it being satire, and I just want to give a shout out to Marshall Beaumont here, who points out that none of the creators of this think it's a satire, right? Because he did mention it very briefly, and it's common leftist narrative I didn't bring it up earlier. So he has various interviews that he's clipped from various places. I can't remember exactly what this is. There are just lots of the original creators. They're like, well, the theme of it is humorous and ironic, but it's not a commentary on real world events, which is what a satire is. A satire is a critique of something else, usually using humor in order to draw out points about it. And as he said, this is not the thing, right? If I read or saw something and say, well, that would work 40K well in 40K, I would just jot it down and rework it into the text. So he's not like, I need to use this to attack that. For example, the reference to Margaret Thatcher is not a reference to Margaret Thatcher. Gazgul Thracker is not Margaret Thatcher. Andy Chambers, again, the guy who invents this, says no. Mag Urk Thracker means big orc leader, as in it's an inheritance of sort of Tolkien's black speech, rather than a critique of British politics in the 1980s. He says no Maggie involved. We were doing our best to forget about the Wicked Witch. Oh, well done, you virtue signal. I mean, not a big Thatcher fan either, but whatever. And you have Rick Priestley being like, well, what's it like? Well, terror is not fascist, and it's not, again, a satire. What it is a kind of giant feudal theocracy. And that's how, I mean, he literally says, I always thought of the individual worlds being the personal fiefdoms of their planetary lords, hardly touched by the Imperium as such. Indeed, how could they be when they might be separated by decades of travel from terror? So I was imagining some worlds would be perfectly nice and peaceful until orcs turn up. Others were largely forgotten about, blah, blah, blah. So the point is, the Imperium of Man is not fascist. This is not a critique of something. This is a fantasy world on its own terms. And that's how the creators envisaged it, right? What a satire is something that specifically references something else to form a critique of that thing, not a world in itself. So ironically, Flash Git's Space King series, excellent, hilarious, is a good satire of Warhammer 40,000. Warhammer 40,000 is not a satire of modern politics or political ideology. It's just a complete coincidence how leftism just happens to map perfectly onto the 4 Chaos Gods. Anyway, if you are wondering, there are people like Guardsman Volkov here who points out that no, 40k is not satire, it is tragedy by the Aristotelian definition of what a tragedy is. It's an epic tragedy, in fact, because of the timescale and the scope of it. It's a tragedy to show the fallen nature of mankind and the difficulty they struggle through in the 41st millennium against the just unbelievable scale of the forces opposed to them. Right? It's not satire, it's tragedy. That's the correct take. Obviously, the left is wrong about everything at all times in all places. Wrong about Starship Troopers, they're wrong about Warhammer, they're wrong about satire and tragedy. It's wrong about everything. Wrong about human nature. Just constantly wrong. I'm just tired of them being so perennial. So let's go through some super chats so I can go to bed, because tomorrow we've got Ben Habib on the podcast. That'd be well worth it. It's going to be a good podcast tomorrow. Special podcast. I will try and get through as many as possible, but I do have to go to bed a relatively early time. God, I love that thumbnail so much. Such a good thumbnail. Have I heard Jonathan Young's brand new 40k methods on the Imperium of Man? Review went, I have not heard. Thomas Drake says, we side with the bugs. Yes, we know. Yeah, and they do. They can't help themselves. As far as they're concerned, the bugs are sentient and are capable of rational moral calculation. And so they view them as essentially human. And if you aren't making rational moral calculations, as in you haven't sat down with the Star Trek diplomacy to sit there and say, well, come on, bugs, we're going to come to the table and hash out a deal. And you're just like, no, the bugs have killed a bunch of humans. I'm just going to kill them. Well, you're the bad guy. As far as they're concerned, you're the fucking bad guy there. Even if the bugs started, they'll sit there and make excuses. They'll make up entire narratives that weren't real to render you as the bad guy. Guess who? Sorry, I don't know much about noise gates, to be honest. So I put it on. I didn't know what it would be like. Hopefully it's not been too bad, though. I didn't want to wear headphones for this. I will actually. Let me let me actually see if I can sort that out quickly. I will turn that down a bit. Let's see if that's any better. Hopefully that's better. When Trump is in his last days, we need to put him on the golden throne and feed him 1,000 Democrat souls a day so he may never truly die. Well, I mean, where would you find a Democrat soul? I don't think we. I'm joking, obviously. Did I go to church today? No, I didn't go to church. My wife would like it if we went to church, but we didn't. Bazinski says, Sargon was the gateway drug out of leftism with Gamergate. Thanks, Obama. Well, I'm so glad. It's nice to see you around. You've been here for years, man. Thank you, Joshua. We Jock says, there's already an entire faction of women in power armor. Yeah, but the thing is, their power armor is power armor for women, right? Because they're not roided up space freaks. And so they have a woman's physique in the power armor. That's not good enough. Because again, what you're saying is there's a hard distinction between men and women. They want woman's face on man's physique, owned the churds, destroyed we've destroyed the exclusive space for men. That's what it's about. It's not about female space marines. It's about destroying exclusive spaces for men. Joshua, yeah, I've removed everything that I thought was going to prevent my channel from being remonetized. So unfortunately, the debate with Thomas Smith had to go as well. Sorry. Harrison says the number of incels who've side children is wild. Yeah, it is crazy how incels are some of the most prolific breeders in the modern era. Philip says the woke right did it. Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I'm still not sure what to make of the concept of woke right. I mean, the whole purpose of wokeism is to destroy hierarchy. So I guess if you're going to argue there's a woke right, it would be one to defend hierarchy. But the thing is, some hierarchies need defending, such as the hierarchy between parents and children. So is it woke right to think that parents have authority over their children? Because I definitely think that. So I must be woke right if I think that. Again, I think the people who use the term woke right haven't really thought it out sufficiently and are just basically pointing to Nazis on Twitter, I think, is what they're complaining about. YouTube Bias says, if men and women should be paid the same for manual labour jobs, why are TERFs upset about sports? Ask TERFs what they think about their double standard. Well, yes, indeed. Creaky Boy says, Carly's trying to get the pastor back. It's been too long since we had a good sermon from Pastor Levi. Man, I don't know why he's not making content. This is a golden age. Like, we're about to move into the second Trump God Emperorship. Come on, it's gotta be worth it. Egg C says, Adam something is a known slow-minded individual. Don't be shocked when he says slow-minded individual things. Well, yeah, I suppose I'm not shocked. I'm surprised at just how dishonest he was about the Starship Troopers narratives. His interpretation was just totally wrong and seemed to be dishonest. So Norm says, what is the media literate crowd? Or is resorts to insulting the fans of property and never engage with the points they make? Well, because if they did that, they would have to admit that they're not as media literate as they think. And notice the term media literacy just means agree with the communist narrative about the thing, right? Like, media literacy with Starship Troopers means, yeah, the humans are the good guys, because there's just no reasoning with the bugs. The bugs start the fight. They engaged in absolutely no diplomacy. They seem to have no interest in engaging with diplomacy. And like the bugs haven't even tried. Like, there's no example of the bugs like even restraining themselves before attacking the humans. They just go full bore, balls to the wall, kill as many as they can. Okay. Like, no attempt was ever made. So why would we even treat them? Anyway, I've said it all before. Logan says, watch you for over a decade and I turn 30 tomorrow. Thanks for making me a libertarian praise keg, but seriously, thank you for all you do. Well, you're welcome. Hopefully these days I'm just making you a sort of traditional conservative, a traditional Englishman, well, whatever you are. Johnson says, I don't understand how these people believe fascism is exclusively far right. These people can't enjoy anything without IRL politics they like. Well, to be honest with you, I view fascism as left wing. So, again, all things that are a product of the Enlightenment are essentially in some way left wing. But it's how left wing they are. And the fascists say, well, look, we're not communists. Like, sure, you're not communists, but you're like, they're there and you're moving to there. And I'm like, well, I'm very traditional. So anyway, Reverend Noor says, why aren't you at Arch streaming at the same time at the same thing? Would love to have heard you both rip it apart together. That would have been good. But the thing is, I wanted to do it on my channel because every video on this channel is got the yellow demonetization icon because I'm just for some reason not allowed to have adverts. So I have to stream on my channel in order to make any money out of it. So thank you for donating a super chat, by the way. And I would have loved to have done it with Arch otherwise, but I don't really have much choice. Jack says, one thing I just don't get is why do they have to call it an evil fascist empire that also has to be the most diverse pro-gay empire? They're evil right-wing fascists, but they still love the gays and diversity. Yeah, it's really fucking weird how they're like, yeah, okay. I mean, he even said, look, I don't know how to change it, so it's not internally inconsistent. And the great question, why? Oh, well, we need more gays and transgender people in there. It's like, okay, but do you think the Imperium would be in favour of that? I don't think the Imperium celebrates Pride Month. Like, so I don't know why, because like you said, they're even right-wing fascists, well, theocrats, but like, so why are you trying to change it so that they're in there? That's just a weird thing, to be honest. Dan says, why is it Russian socialism is called left-wing and German and Italian socialism is right-wing? Who started this nonsense? Mussolini himself was admitted communist, and fascists are interchangeable, always in the same place. Yeah, basically, from the sort of classical liberal perspective, there's just very little difference. But ultimately, in practice, it really didn't make much difference if you were living under fascism or socialism. Jack says, fascism is wearing cool coats and not liking alien bugs murdering children. It's a low bar. It's a low bar. Not a banned account says, my sister is getting divorced over fascist Trump vote. Fucking hell. Thanks. Owen Cron? Binary Ghost says, I find that the media literacy types really get mad when you tell them that you acknowledge the subtext, but you still find the media cool and fun at face value, and that's what you actually enjoy. Well, how dare you, sir? Don't you realise that makes you literally Hitler? Norm says, things that the leftists choose over their fellow man. Bears, bugs, demons who want to destroy humanity. The force of chaos and destruction. I'm sensing a pattern here. Yes. Dan says, love your videos, Carl. Who's your favourite philosopher? Aristotle. I'm not familiar with the works of Alexander Titler. Not familiar with him, I'm afraid. But Aristotle, by far. Very few modern philosophers, or any. I don't like many philosophers. I don't know why I did agree with philosophy now. Like, I think philosophy basically ended at Aristotle, and everything after it has been a waste of time. Zodlander says, the movies don't explain FTL drives. Is there anything in the movies that can explain how bugs can't send rocks towards planet using light speed? Well, like I said, it's bug plasma. I mean, I thought in the movie that it was they wormholed the asteroids, which is why they're sailing along, everything seems fine, and then suddenly, asteroid, because there's the gravitational or graviton, whatever it is, thing. I thought that popped out into existence, but I rewatched the clip before we did this because I was just double checking, and that's not the case. There's a gravity field, and you see like the 3D model of it like zooming in, and then suddenly there's just the asteroid in front of them. So I don't know if it's implied or they just were just really blind because this asteroid must have been visible for quite some time leading up to that, but it's never explained. And oh no, the space fantasy book about morality didn't get the physics right. Okay, maybe not. Platinum says, people love to forget that bugs are not dumb animals, but they are highly intelligent spacefaring species. Yeah, again, the idea that, they're just on Clendathu, bro. No, they're fucking everywhere, actually. Which is why, and they are, again, they're described as very aggressive. Like, anyway. Brother Doom says, I've argued with leftists who claim everything is propaganda, true or false. Well, they do have that opinion, actually. They might say, well, selective reporting is propaganda. And to be honest with you, they're true. That's correct. Because we see the left-wing media doing it all the time. But the thing is it selective reporting when you literally have a live from the front feed? And again, everything in it was true, and there's no reason to think that there was pertinent information we weren't given access to. So, Gorgeous Mayhem says, any truth to Elon donating 100 million to Reform and Farage? No idea, to be honest. We'll see. Steve says, I just watched that video yesterday and the creator has definitely left. He has common sense on public transit, but is still a lefty true double thinker. Okay. I did scroll through his videos and see there's a lot of them that are like non-political, and he's, the framing is non-political. So I don't know. I didn't watch the rest of his stuff. NTR Uncle says, I tried to put myself in the shoes of a leftist, but couldn't. I simply don't hate myself and humanity enough to do so. Yes. AC says, these media literacy people have never heard the quote, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. What a bunch of slow-minded pseudo-intellectuals. Well, the problem is ideological capture. They're trying to advance a goal, and so they have to blind themselves to certain aspects of any subject in order to be able to chart the path through the obstacles. It's like, well, if you're going to do that, then you're not being entirely honest, are you? Joshua BB, hey man, how's it going? Says, if the Terran Federation were all Redditors, I would be rooting for the Bucks. Aesthetics matter. What are you willing to fight for? I don't know, man. I think that even if it was a bunch of gross Redditors fighting to save humanity, because they were like, yeah, no, we're pro-human, fuck the bugs, I'd still have to side with them morally, right? Even if I fucking don't want to see a bunch of Redditors doing anything. Sentinel Rex says, fun is right-wing now. That seems to be true. Honestly, that seems to be true. It just seems to be the case that the right wing is prepared to have fun and the left wing is not. They look at fun and go, well, that's not fun. Which genuinely seems to be where they're at this point. Maybe the reason, Jack says, maybe the reasons these stories seem so militaristic and harsh is because they're stories set in the military during harsh times, like a war for survival with aliens that want to eat your souls. Yeah, that's another thing they have a real problem with. It's like, look, the framing is an expressly masculine framing, and you're not really very masculine people. And so, naturally, you're not going to really approve of the framing, and you're going to have complaints, and your one complaint is, that's Hitler. It's like, okay. Kopesh, the Imperium is a theocratic feudal oligarchy. Yeah, I know. I mean, the creators of Games Workshop said it as much themselves. It's so evidently true. Thraza says, they're not crimes against humanity, they're crimes for humanity. Exactly. You can't commit crimes against humanity against aliens. Rob says, the rewards of tolerance are treachery and betrayal. An open mind is like a fortress with its gates unbarred and unguarded. Ave Imperator, the Emperor protects. Rob, you're in trouble now. The media literacy crowd, they're furious. You can't just enjoy Warhammer. Can't. Dud says, heresy like speaking against the state in a communist regime. Yeah. And the thing is, it's not that the fascists weren't like that as well, but the communists were definitely worse for it. The fascists are concerned about whatever threatens their power, but the communists want to rewire your entire worldview. So, anyway. Generica says, them being moral in video games is absolutely an escapist fantasy for leftists because they can't live it. True. CGR says, I find that Bethesda tries to portray the Brotherhood of Steel and the Fallout as the same fascist light rather than explaining their rationale and good faith. Yeah, that's another good example, actually. Because again, the Brotherhood of Steel's sort of xenophobic perspective is kind of justified in the Fallout universe. I mean, fucking look at it. Like, why wouldn't it be? So, yes, that's another good example. Brzezinski says, what if the Tower Eldar in a theoretical canon used the red armbands and used Hugaboo's coats? Would they be ascribed humanity too? Yeah, well, that's that's a great question. If Paul Verhoeven was like, yeah, actually, I hate the Eldar. I'm going to make an Eldar movie, going to give them red armbands and Hugo Boss coats. Are they the fascists? Norm says, if this guy has such a problem with 40k, you should go play D&D instead. Seems like more his speed. Yeah, but the thing is, it's not really about... I mean, to be honest with you, I'd be surprised if he doesn't play Warhammer, right? I think he probably isn't telling the truth there. But let's assume he does. It's not really relevant whether he plays 40k or not for him. For him, this is about Nazis. This is, like, everything in his life is about Nazis. So, remember, what would Hitler do? Is he wakes up in the morning, he goes, right, what breakfast would Hitler have? All right, I'm going to have my vegan oat slop, just in case Hitler would have had bacon sandwiches or something. NTR Uncle again says, In their relentless quest to replace Christianity with their own Gnostic religion, leftists have forgotten that zealots are a thing which exists in 40k. Well, the thing is, you've got to ask yourself, can an ideologue recognize themselves as an ideologue? And the answer is probably no. So they are the zealots, and that's why they're applying this to everything. And they can't themselves know it, I think. Generico says, we'll know that if the Imperium were the mobs and his job was to attend them, he would do it no question. In-game or out, hard to say what's meant with that ban. Right, yes, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, no, that's true. If you could be like, well, you're right, killing civilians is bad. But what if they're fascist civilians? What if every man, woman, and child is a devout fascist? Is it wrong then? And he'd be like, I'm not sure, probably. Generica says, progs with every time they see a spiteful mutant. I identify with that. Yeah. Astaroth says, I think these bugmen simple don't understand that normal men have a fancy about dying, fighting side by side with their brothers. And primarily, as well, in defense of people who can't fight, right? The people who are actually the innocent civilians with whom safety we have been charged. Like there's such a great fucking scene in Space Marine 2 where you're going to attack the I think it's the Zenj force at the time, who are coming through these portals, and you've basically got to do this heroic last stand surrounded by your Space Marine brothers, and you're just there fucking blazing. It is fucking cool where you're holding a fucking flag, and it's just like, okay, listen. I know when I'm being cynically manipulated, but you fucking got me. That was amazing. I loved it. I love everything about it. You fucking got me, alright? It was great. It was really, really good. Jackson says, hating on Cadia is so telling. The reason that story resonates so well is the idea of humans fighting on when all hope is lost, even their own homeland is lost, for the sake of others, is heroism. Yeah, I know, man. Like, it's gross, actually, isn't it? It's like, look, there's nothing wrong with the Cadia memes at all. In fact, they're totally wholesome. Like, yeah, to be like, oh yeah, these just losers. It's like, no, fuck off, man. Like, there are good things and bad things, and we ought to use our discernment to tell them apart, actually. Jack says, if you don't let the aliens kill people and turn them into food/slaves, then you're evil and probably a fascist. It's like, yeah, again, really low bar. Binary Ghost says, the orcs are not evil. They are born that way and it's part of their culture, you space bigot. That is true, right? That is true. The orcs aren't born evil, don't choose to be evil. They are born violent, and it is embedded in their DNA to build weapons and kill people. And I am a space bigot. Ariel says, I'm 30 minutes behind on the topic of playing an immoral character. Like, they act like GTA isn't one of the most popular franchises of all time. Yeah, like, look at the Godfather movies, man. Everyone fucking loves the Godfather movies. Like, it's not that doesn't happen. AC says, superior human. If Space Marines were a superior human, they would be able to have children, and they can't. Well, that's the thing. Whenever anyone says superior, you have to say at what, right? The Space Marines are not superior at, being the life and soul of the party. They're superior about defending humanity from waves of unstoppable aliens, but that's it, right? So it's one thing that they do. Jack says, sorry, Fido, but the H-man like dogs, so we've got to put you down. Generica says, progs worry about Moustache Man because they are such NPCs that if he actually came back and took over, they would fall in line. And as a subconscious level, they actually know that. Yeah, I do wonder. I do genuinely wonder. Binary Ghost says, it's been almost 100 years since Hitler was around and everyone's afraid he's hiding under the bed. Yeah, no, it's mental, isn't it? I just don't want to have to talk about Hitler all the time. Like, they constantly bring it up, and it's like, okay, but like, we have real problems that are really happening here, and actually Hitler's opinion on it isn't that relevant because he's been dead for a long time, okay? Demaster says, Stephen Hicks' talk on the origins of postmodernism makes me realise that leftists are anti-natalist, nihilist misanthropes. Leftists are IRL chaos worshippers. And honestly, that's basically it. It's not a coincidence that all of leftism maps perfectly onto chaos gods, right? They're just completely there. Sorry, I'm just trying to find where I was. I think Arch said it, but 2024 and onward needs to be the era of the chud. We have to have victory over and over while having fun hammering the point. I totally agree. I totally identify with being a chud, to be honest, by the way they describe it. I'm like, yeah, I'm totally down with it. Yeah, I'm totally happy being a chud. But right, I'm afraid it's 11 o'clock, so I'm going to have to go to bed. Got a big podcast tomorrow, and if I don't do it, I'll be fucking shattered. But thank you, everyone, for joining me. Sorry about not getting to the last couple of super chats there, but I did try to do my best. And thanks for joining me and watching, and I'll see you on the podcast tomorrow, folks. So have a great evening for the rest of the evening, or whatever time it is where you are, and I'll see you again soon.